The BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Starving Artist Brewing. Starving Artist Brewing may be a small speck on Michigan's beer map, but they say big things come in small packages. A brewery who really puts their money where their mouth is, supporting underground artists far and wide. Making delicious beers with the simple belief that you should judge beer, not people. BREWtally Speaking podcast is proudly sponsored by Rockabilia.com. For over 30 years, Rockabilia has been the go-to destination for all things band merch. With over 500,000 items in their online store and collaborations with today's hottest bands, you're sure to find something you love. Use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total order. So go pick up your favorite new piece of merch now over at Rockabilia.com. And now, on to the show.
Say you have to have a lot of passion for what you're doing. This rings true because it's so hard that if you don't, any rational person would give up. It's really hard, and you have to do it over a sustained period of time. So if you don't love it, and if you're not having fun doing it, you're gonna give up.
What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the BREWtally Speaking podcast. I am your host, John, and this episode's guest is Andrew Wells of Eidola of Dance Gavin Dance. And like always, this was a fun chat. It's so funny to think back, especially, since I'm still in a little bit of a nostalgic mood of, episode 400, with this being 2 episodes removed from. But it's a thing where, it's so funny to think that when I started this show, I was like, I'm never having return guests. Anything we talked about, it's as good as it's going to get. And then I started having some people back on, and I realized it's really kind of a continuation of the conversation we've been having. And a lot of times, if that person and I are actually friends outside of the show, which a lot of the returning guests are, that it becomes an extension of our actual relationship. And the way that this episode started off, and I do really want to kind of touch on this for a minute because, I know I've said countless times that what I think makes the podcasting medium so good and special and important at times is just the reality and the vulnerability that sometimes the guest and or the host puts themselves in that makes it more applicable to, I guess applicable would actually be the word, but regardless, to the person listening. And I talked about it almost right out the gate in the episode, but like I said, I wanted to kind of focus on it just a little bit more. Talking about how I was really afraid that something had happened to Andrew. And if you've listened to the back episodes that we've done, and granted there is one that's missing, but, one of the last times Andrew came on, we kind of addressed that in the fact that, he has dealt with mental health issues and struggles with that at times, and as we all do typically, and that he had suicidal ideation as well. And there was a tour, actually, when I had gone and met him in person for the first time, where he had an attempt, unsuccessfully, obviously, but it's a thing where sometimes with Andrew not being on social media, and it's a good thing, but it is a thing where at times where if he doesn't respond to texts or you don't see him for a little while, it just creates this wonder of what's happening. How is he doing? And, with Andrew and I talking the last time about the loss of our friends, close friends, and not necessarily having answers and it being so sudden and stuff like that, we have been in this situation where you put yourself in this mindset of, I wish I would have said something differently. I wish I could have done more. I wish I would have done more. And sometimes it's really hard to live with those things and those thoughts as a person. And so it becomes this thing where when I couldn't get a hold of Andrew, when my wife and I were going to go out to Utah and we were planning on seeing him when we went to the Nothing More show and hanging out with him and his wife for some dinner and so forth. And when I wasn't able to get a hold of him, when he said he'd be home and able to be got a hold of, I started kind of really freaking out and panicking. And I was trying not to overreact, and I was trying to just be like, okay, I know he's a pretty personal dude, like keeps to himself. But it's not like him to not at least shoot me a text or send me like a voice message or something within a handful of days of getting my text. And so I really started freaking out. And I had kind of maybe thought the worst. And I was really trying not to. And it was one of those things where I started to write a message to the Eidola Instagram account, because I know that Sergio or someone at least is active on it. And I hadn't seen any posts from the band for a little bit. So I'm like, oh man, what the fuck's going on? And then I noticed after I had sent a message being like, I'm really worried. Like, is Andrew okay? Is whoever is running this account, can you like let me know at least that he's okay? And probably like an hour later, as the world does in the day and age of social media, I got like an update. Like, I'm not following DGD on anything, but I somehow got a sponsored or suggested post, and it was, tour is going really great with Papa Roach over here in Europe or something like that. And then I kind of went and looked at the tour dates, and I was like, oh shit, okay, he's on tour, and probably, if I know Andrew, is not paying to get specialty phone privileges and so forth when you travel abroad to make his phone number work and all that kind of stuff. And then I kind of put two and two together, and I was like, obviously he's playing, obviously he's okay if he's overseas playing with DGD. And if there was something wrong with him, there obviously would have been an announcement on DGD's page or Eidola's page or something. So then I quickly deleted the message I had sent the Eidola band page. And then Andrew got a hold of me a couple of days later when he had some service. But it's one of those things. I'm not ashamed to talk about this a little bit more at length. I'm not ashamed to have admitted that I've done that, because I do think it's the reality that some of us live in when we've lost people, when we've gotten those phone calls, gotten those text messages of our friends, our family no longer being around, and we wish we would have done something more than what we inevitably did. I can honestly say there are still in some of my friends' passings that I constantly think about what I could have done differently, if I could have texted something differently than the text I sent, if I would have reached out, would something have changed? Would that person have felt alone or whatever? And so I'm here to say, and Andrew and I echo this sentiment pretty quickly after I reveal all that. But it's, don't be afraid to reach out to your friends. Don't be afraid to reach out to those that are important to you, because you'll never be able to get back that moment. So if you're feeling like shooting a friend or a loved one a text and just letting them know how you're doing, or that you're thinking of them, or even giving them a phone call or setting up plans to hang out, do it. Because you will regret not doing it after the fact when you no longer have a choice in the matter. All of that heavy shit aside, let's get into my conversation with Andrew. I promise it's not so heavy as what I just kind of was saying. It's actually a little bit differently. I know I just said we're going to get into it, but we'll get into it in just a second. But this one actually is a little bit more positive. It's a little bit something different, a huge thing. If you've ever seen Andrew in person, you know that he is a very large individual, very swole. Andrew, I think everyone's been calling him Andrew Swells as of late, and swole. How do they say it? Swole Dola or something like that. But it was a thing where Andrew obviously has really taken to his physical health as well, and really been hitting the gym and being a personal trainer and stuff. And it's something him and I have talked about quite a bit in our relationship as friends, but is something that we've never really discussed on the podcast. And with my own kind of weight loss journey and trying to be more mindful of what I'm eating and how healthy I'm trying to be, it seemed like a great avenue. Actually, Andrew suggested it, surprisingly. He was like, let's do a podcast and let's talk about this and let's go down this rabbit hole. So it's funny, for someone that doesn't really like being super social and doesn't really do much in the form of press or media, I do love that apparently this show is a safe place for him to want to come on and want to have these conversations. So without further ado, this is my conversation with Andrew. I'll talk to you on the other side of it. So, I mean, what I was going to say off the record, but now on the record, I mean, I feel like this is essentially, in a shitty way, but like thanks to modern technology, this is essentially the hang we were supposed to have like weeks or about a month ago. But unfortunately, just, life things happen, and family takes precedence over sometimes, friends being around or whatever. But I guess first and foremost, like, I'm going to say this because I don't mean to make this be weird, and I don't want it to sound weird, but like I want it to be a thing where, a lot of people, when they listen to our conversations, just can tell like, that we're really good, like we're good friends and we have real conversations with each other. So I want to say this because I think it's imperative for people who care about other people to do. So the last time you were on, we kind of had talked about some of the struggles you were going through the time we had talked before, but weren't able to air the episode. And I'm going to be fully transparent. And there was a stretch there where I had texted you and like, I was trying to like figure out like what days and all that kind of stuff were going to work for you for our trip so we could hang out. And I got nothing from you. And my mind, and I don't know if it's a good thing, a bad thing, whatever, but like my mind immediately went to a bad place where I was like, oh my God, is something wrong with Andrew? Like what's going on? Like it's not been like him recently to not answer within a day or two of me sending him a text or something. And it got to the point where I was so worried that I literally started to write a message to the Eidola Instagram page to be like, I know you're not on it, but I know someone's probably active on it enough that they'll see it and maybe be like, oh shit. And I was like, hey, I'm just trying to make sure Andrew's okay. Like, and I'm not even bullshitting that I know Andrew here's like receipts, like text messages. I got his fucking phone number. And then I sat with it for like maybe 4 or 5 hours. And then I went through and deleted it. And I was like, that's so fucking crazy. Like, who would do that? And then I just happened to like catch a sponsored Dance Gavin thing on Instagram that was like, oh, we're on tour in Europe and da 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 da. And then I looked at the dates and I was like, oh fuck, he's probably overseas and can't get text messages and shit.
Got it, bro.
And then I was like, God damn it, like, but it was one of those.
No, I appreciate that, man. I appreciate that, like, you have a concern enough, and my history with some of my mental health problems that I've had in the past with depression or anxiety or suicidality that I've since worked through in a multitude of ways. But yeah, that was definitely a huge reason. I mean, I have had some family stuff that has been going on. Some health problems in my grandparents that have been ongoing for the last like 6 to 8 months in particular that have ebbed and flowed. Some cancer diagnoses. I've had a couple friends that have overdosed and a couple friends that have committed suicide. And so with all of that, I've been slammed busy also with music. And so it's a lot of like nonstop go. But I didn't have pretty much any service while I was in the UK, Germany, or Netherlands. Like anyone who knows me, I do have a smartphone, but I don't really use it. I don't really use the apps on it particularly, unless I'm like Ubering somewhere or like getting something to eat, checking my emails. And so I don't have like a premier service that I pay to like go overseas and have great service, like nonstop data. I'm just like, all right, I'm just going to try to get on Wi-Fi when I can so I can call my mom and my dad and hopefully like be able to find my way around a city in Europe. And that's always for like 5 weeks because we were out there with Dance for almost, for a few weeks out there for the Don Broco shows and the Germany shows. And then my wife and I went on vacation after that. We did like Spain, Amsterdam, and London for a few days. And so I ended up staying like an extra 10 days or something. So yeah, I was out there a bunch. And then I was just out there with Eidola too. So I've been in Europe like 2.5 months this year already. Yeah. Just crazy, man. So I apologize for the lack of text, but I appreciate you understanding, knowing the situation. So
no, and it gets weird because like I feel like at times that's the hard part of I think, and we've talked about like how, obviously you've lost, and you just said like you've lost people, like I've lost people. And I think there becomes this like weird middle ground where you're like, should I worry? Should I be concerned? Or is everything fine? And I just need to give someone that space. And I feel like that's the weird vibe where I'm at with some people where I'm like, I don't know right now. And then like, it's the adverse where sometimes like there are the people I know that like I know and like I can text you and like I know I'm not bothering you. But there are some people where like it's still in the back of my head where I'm like, God, I might be just being a bother to this person where they're like, ugh. Kind of one of those things. And so it's a thing where like I live kind of in both worlds where I'm like, I'm concerned and I'm worried, but maybe I shouldn't be. And I just need to kind of find a balance. But it's a thing where, like I said, to kind of preface this, like one of the things I love about our conversations is that we're able to kind of share these raw and real moments of our lives, of our relationship together. And to me, it's one of those where I hope that, 5 minutes into this, that someone might be like, yeah, I feel that way too. And maybe I should reach out to someone, or maybe I need to figure out what that balance is of letting that.
I think you should always reach out. I'm gonna say something that's if the friend you're reaching out to is bugged by the fact that you care enough to ask them how they're doing or reach out to them, they're probably not that good of a friend. I'm just gonna straight up say it. Like if they're viscerally bugged, like, oh fuck, this guy, he's just bugging me because he cares about me. It's like, what kind of friend is that, bro? No, get better friends. Yeah, go find better people you can fucking reach out to. You know what I mean? I think you should always check on your friends. And I say that as somebody who's lost a lot of friends who, you always have that feeling in the back of your mind, like, could I have done more? Could I have done more to help this person get out of the rut that they're in? Whatever that is, alcoholism, drug addiction, depression. I mean, life is hard. I don't think anyone who's lived it would tell you otherwise. But I think it's always good to check on your people. It's a tough world out there. I think it's good to know that other people care. Like, it's a big part of what my mentality shifted with music, is just really focused on the positivity that we can bring to that, in such a dark space that the world seems to be in. Yeah. And so, I think that the more we can foster those types of communities, the better. 100%.
Well, I think, this is, as, a lot of times I feel like for as much as I share and we give the give and take of, kind of our personal lives and our relationship and kind of putting out there for other people, I kind of feel like I wanted to, something I've been sharing with you has kind of been like, I guess my journey to losing some weight and trying to not be a garbage person who lives in the fucking rat race of like, I'm too busy and literally making all the excuses. And something I think I had said one of the last times we talked was, I am somebody who lives in a perpetual state of, you either need to just own your shit and be honest with yourself or change. So like a big thing for me was, a lot of times I'd say like, I know I need to lose weight. Like I'm not happy with the weight I'm at, but like, I'm not making progress to do anything about it. So I just need to like, be like, then this is where I'm at in my life and this is what I'm doing. And I just need to be happy, like either way. Whether I choose to make a choice to be healthier or just, and I'm happy where I'm at, because I think too many people live on such opposite ends of the extreme where it's like, I need to lose weight. And then you do nothing about it. And you're like, oh, well, I'm sick because I'm fat or whatever. I'm not in shape or I'm not this or I'm not that, but you do nothing to do anything about it. So you need to have that realization of like, either it bothers me enough to do something or it bothers me not enough to do something. And I need to be happy with my decision either way. And it was just a thing where, like little nuances as I get closer to 40, I'm going to be 39 and like, what is it? We are in May. So in a couple months in September. And it was one of those things where it's like, there was a point in my life where I was like, if I ever hit 200 pounds, like shit, I need to like dial things back. And then it's like, sure. I got to 200 pounds. And then I was like, like there was a point where all you ever wanted growing up as a thin, young kid was, I wish I could gain weight and I just can't. And these are things we kind of tell ourselves, I think, to make us feel okay with the change that's happening that we're not happy with. And finally, it just became this thing where, with my wife, Bridget kind of realizing that she's diabetic and needs to change some stuff, I was like, I need to change too. And this is kind of a good reset lifestyle wise for both of us. And, I've been trying to lose weight, and I always was like, I can't make it to the gym, making excuses. And then it just became this thing where I was like listening to Kevin Smith for a while, and something he did that lost him a lot of weight was just fasting, walking, and just watching what you eat. Just very simple things you can do to change your daily habits and behaviors. And it's been kind of weird because as someone who's very in my own head about things and thinks about a lot of stuff, I realized, and I even said it to a friend the other night, where I was like, it's weird because in my head, I'm like, yeah, I went like 23 hours without eating. And now I have like an hour, 2 hour window where I'm just going to eat whatever. Cause like still be mindful, but like, that's my window to eat. And I was like,
yeah, you're not gorging, but you're intermittent fasting. You're finding that window. Yeah.
But then it's fucked up because I'm like, God, is this how it sounds when someone who, and no offense to anyone who is going through this, but it's like, is that what it sounds like when someone who just starves themselves, where you're like, yeah, I haven't gone 22 hours without eating. But it is crazy in that this, month and a half or so of doing this and dropping weight and so forth, that it's been crazy to realize kind of the relationship we as people, or I'll at least say myself, has with food, where it's like a lot of times I feel like we eat not because we're hungry or need food or sustenance, but we just eat because we're stressed, we're depressed, we're happy, we're whatever, and it's a coping thing. And that a lot of times, even now, I've realized my relationship with food has become a thing where I eat slower and then I eat significantly less, and then I realize I'm full, because I don't really need to eat as much as I had been eating. And even tracking on like an app and stuff like that, the what I'm eating, it's like it's putting me on, I think, just under 2,100 calories for the day in that like 2 hour gap. And it's still like when I'm putting stuff in, I'm like, oh God, I shouldn't have eaten that. And then I see like it counts everything, and I'm kind of just barely getting to the 2,100 calories. And I'm like, oh, well, I guess it's not that bad. But it's just been crazy because, it's interesting when you're going through the journey to try to better yourself and trying to lose weight, like the mental, I'll say from my perspective, the mental struggles and hangups where you're like looking at the scale every day, you're trying to watch what you eat. And then you're like, fuck, man, I've been at like 205 for like a week and a half, and I just can't get past this weight, like no matter what I do. And then magically, like 3 or 4 days later, and like then you're under it, and then it's like I sent you the photo yesterday, I think, where like my goal was to get under 200, and then I was at 197 and a half, and I'm like, oh shit, I'm here. But like now that gives me the motivation. It's like, all right, let's get to 190. Let's get like, because the overall goal for right now, like the big goal is 175. Like I feel like once I get there, like that's a pretty good weight for my size. Like my
how
height,
tall are you?
Like 5'7".
Oh, that's
and that's still probably a little bit extra on my frame. But
dude, there's so much to it, man. I just want to say, I'm proud of you for like just putting in the time.
Also,
like,
I want to say this is water, by the way. Not I got to get my 96 ounces in.
That's right, dude. No, I'm proud of you, man. Just for even having the self-awareness to know what the right path is for you. Like you had the cognizant self-awareness to say, okay, there's an issue, whether that's an aesthetic issue you have with yourself, that's a self-conscious thing, or it's like a physical issue. A lot of people, I've worked with clients as a personal trainer, as a nutritionist, that come from all walks of life, right? I've worked with disabled folks. I've worked with elderly patients. I've worked with clients with diabetes, post-cancer patients, right? In rebuilding, body composition, weight loss, strength training, I've worked across the board on all that. And I think that it starts with a mindset. I think anybody in that industry would tell you that. It starts with a mentality behind what you're doing and an intention. And so if you recognize a problem that's happening in your life, whether that's mental health or you just don't like the way you look in the mirror, not based on anyone else's standards, just your standards that you want to live up to and where you want to go, just putting forth that mindset and that intention, I think is the first step to becoming the most self-actualized person of yourself, that version of yourself that you can be. And there's so much to it. It's crazy when you look at fitness as an industry or as a field of study. There's so much information, and a lot of it's contradictory. A lot of it's constantly evolving and changing. And you have examples of this all the way through any human history or culture where they set up kind of guidelines around food or their relationships with food, right? I don't think it's really too much of a stretch for anyone to say that Americans have a very interesting relationship with food compared to a lot of the rest of the world. And I think that it's about your mentality behind it. Like, what makes you feel your best? What makes you feel your healthiest? And then what long-term, what does that look like? You know, you might feel the best eating shit all day, every day, if you've trained your body on sugars and hyper amounts of caffeine. But you've probably noticed a difference in like your mental health and your physical health when you're fasting like this, and you're paying attention to what's going in your body, what's fueling it. That's very significant. I think a lot of people don't pay a lot of mind to that they could be. If you're feeling shitty in your everyday life and you're dealing with a lot of issues that you may be medicating for, I would never speak out against medications that work for you, supplementation that works for you, because you'll know your body better than anyone. But I will say there's not quite, as far as supplementary action that you can do, exercise and dieting, I always recommend it, just even in small doses. If you can get up, do something that you enjoy, right? Do something that you thoroughly like to do. If you like being outside, maybe go on a walk, an incline walk of some kind, go out and, if you like sports, HIIT training type activity, go out and engage with your community, go to a local gym, maybe you're like pickleball or basketball. There's always ways you can stay active and engaged in your community that will make you feel better long term. The journey for me, when you're talking, like when you say like, man, I just sit there and I work week after week and this fucking scale won't change. It just sits here at 205. What the fuck is this? It's crazy. I became pretty obsessed with fitness over the last 5 years, since I really started my journey. When I started with Gavin Dance and Eidola, I was 145 pounds. I'm 245 pounds now, currently.
Shit.
Give or take a couple pounds depending on water weight, right? Like I've gained 100 pounds. It's obviously not all complete muscle, but I would say I usually try to keep my body fat percentage between 9 and 14 on my bulk seasons and 9 on my cut seasons. There's so many ways you can push your body into doing outstanding things. The human body's a feat. It's insane. I mean, there's so many people who've been involved in accidents, who've lost limbs, that, I've worked with clients that have gone through all sorts of hell that you could possibly imagine. And they get up every day and they fucking go after it. They get after it. They work, they put in the time, they get out there and they push themselves and they push their abilities and they push their limits. And that's the most inspiring shit that I've been engaged in my 31 years on the planet, is like really inspiring stories of like overcoming adversity and pushing yourself to new heights. I love that shit. So, the journey is awesome. Anybody that's involved with fitness too at varying levels, I think a lot of people love to discuss it with other people. Like, I love that you're on this journey, because no matter where you go in the journey, we can always talk about it. If you come to me like, Andrew, all right, I'm down to 170, bro. Like, I want to buff these biceps up, or I want to, I want to have some pecs, right? What do I do? And then I go, okay, well, yeah, we can build you a program off of that. Like, let's talk about, hypertrophy. Let's talk about, set programming, how many days a week you're going in. Like, there's so much to it. I love every component of it. I go pretty relentlessly. I think if you talk to anyone that I've ever toured with, especially the last couple of years, it's relentless, dude. I don't let myself sleep a wink, man. I remember that Eidola tour was crazy, dude. The one in Europe, because the European gyms and US gyms, it's a little different. It's pretty much the same concept, but in the UK they have a Pure Gym, is like the Planet Fitness style, like chain gym. Right. It's like a $6 day pass. You go in, you go bust it out. And so I would go every fucking day of that tour. And I played 2 sets a day. So I'd wake up in the morning, I'd go get my food, I'd sound check Eidola, I'd sound check DGD, sound check Eidola, fucking run to the Pure Gym, scarf something down, play Eidola's set, try to get another meal in before the DGD set, come back, play DGD, get one more meal in right before I go to bed, slap it, right? Because on tour, I'll lose weight on tour. I become obsessed with it. It's like if I go out, I'll spend money on it, like just to make sure I can eat well, because that's a huge component, man. It's huge. And I've seen it's cool to be in bands where other guys are at different levels in their fitness journey too. Because like Tillian, he's been working out a while. He's fun to work out with. John's fun to work out with. No one in Eidola really works out except for Sergio has been coming with me lately. His dad,
like cardio guy.
Yeah, he's a cardio guy, but he'll lift with me once in a while. So we'll go and we'll try to do some sets. And he'll always send pictures to his family, and his dad will chime in and he'll say, "No, don't turn into SpongeBob." And there's this old episode of SpongeBob where he has like the blow up arms, and it's just arms. It's just SpongeBob with giant arms. And so they call me SpongeBob in the Medina household now, apparently. So, but yeah, man, I love your journey so far, man. Thanks for keeping me up to date on that and sharing your journey. I think 175 is a crazy goal, man. You'll be shredded. You look good.
Well, it's funny because like I always grew up, and I think this is kind of speaking to this, because when you and I were talking and texting about this and the journey between each other, like what we're personally going through and so forth, I feel like I maybe offer a completely different background into it than a lot of other people. And so I guess kind of, the give and take relationship of these podcasts and what makes them to me so valuable is, I grew up with a cleft lip and palate. I grew up with a heart murmur, like to the point where like when I was born, the doctors told my parents, like, be prepared to him for not to make it. And then as I grew up, because of the cleft lip and palate, I had to go to annual visits for, psych evaluations and dietary things and all these other things. And it was weird because like, in some instances I'm having professional doctors telling me like, actually, I don't want to grab a bag of meat as my example to use as a graph. So I'll use that because that felt disingenuous, but it'd be like, here's the heart, here's normal. And then like, here's you. And like, it became this thing where as I've gotten older and I understand more of a psychological level of things, I realize how damaging that was to me growing up, where it's like, I'm having medical professionals tell me I'm not normal. And I'm being compared to quote unquote normal. And these are the things I'm never going to do. These are the things that I won't be able to do because of these limitations that they're saying I have. And it was always this thing where, how could it not affect my self like esteem? How could it not affect my self-value and just how I would maybe approach things in life? And, I can say now being, almost 39 that it's like, I fucking wrestled. I played basketball. I played football. I ran track. Like I did all the sports basically. And I lettered in all of them. And it's a thing where so much of my early life was fitness and like working out relentlessly. But it became a thing where it's like I couldn't fucking gain weight to like save my life no matter like how much I ate. And there was always this part of me that it's like all I wanted to do was gain weight and be normal, not like fucking tiny. And I can almost pinpoint where my journey to gaining weight started. And it was a winter, because here in Michigan, we have some pretty brutal winters on occasion. And I worked at Sam's Club at the time, so I could buy things in bulk. And so I had found White Russians and Irish car bombs. And I like for a winter, so like 5 months of the year, all I drank almost every day was at least 1 to 2 White Russians. And like,
wait, how old were you?
Like probably 20. I think it was when I first started dating Bridget. So I was like probably 23, 24.
Yeah, I did a White Russian summer one time. I worked on windmills in Wyoming. I was like 20 or 21. That was
they're so fucking delicious.
They taste great. fuck, I don't
But
drink anymore, but man,
holy shit, are they fattening? And it's like over
everybody-
that.
Oh yeah, it's all sugar.
Yeah, well, and it's like, especially when you're making like you're using like the half and half and stuff like that, like to
the creamer and
So it became a thing where it's like working at Sam's Club, where everything's either in bulk or like buy one get one half off or for free, essentially. Yeah. It became a thing where it's like for 5 months, that's all I was drinking, and Guinnesses and stuff like that, and like I put on like 25 pounds.
Guinnesses, Jesus Christ.
Love them. Still
save
love them.
Some pussy for the rest of us, bro.
And it was just a thing where like I know like that's the beginning of me starting to put on weight, and like I think at that point I was probably weighing in at like 135, 140, and then putting on the 20 pounds, it's like I'm at like 160, 165. And like I felt good. Like I felt like people, and I was gonna pull up a photo of like me back in the day.
Yeah, you feel strong.
Yeah.
You feel,
like I feel good because like I'm finally putting on weight on my body, and people are like, "You look healthy finally," versus just emaciated. And
sure, yeah. Every time you go to the barbecue, your grandma asks you, "Why don't you eat a fucking cheeseburger?"
Sure, and I'm eating like 4. But it's a thing
exactly.
where like
you're eating junk food all day, just not gaining. Yeah, for sure. And everybody tells you it's a whole thing.
Yeah,
I've been there. Yeah.
Yeah, it just became this thing where it's like my journey with gaining weight and eating like crappy and all that kind of stuff. Like I know the other thing for me was growing up, like, my dad was someone who would, and I understand the philosophy, but I think the execution is what gave me kind of almost like a weird eating disorder of sorts, where it's like, with vegetables and stuff like that, like I just didn't like certain foods. And the other thing apart about like my cleft lip and palate is I had so many oral surgeries. I had so many different like orthodontia work of like braces, palate expanders, retainers, all these things where it limited what I could eat, when I could eat it. So like if I had an oral surgery, it's like that first month and a half, it's a purely liquid diet. And then from there for like the next 3 weeks or so, it's a semi-soft foods. And then by then, hopefully, if all the stitching and everything's good to go, I can have solid foods, but it's still kind of limited. So my relationship with food at a very young age was very weird. And it just became this thing where like, adding on to like my dad growing up in a family in the Midwest and in the, like, I think late 50s, early 60s and stuff, where it's like, he came from a low income family where it's like, you have to eat food. Like there's no other food to go around. Like it is what it is. And his mentality used to be like, so eat this or try it. And it'd be like, well, I don't like it. And then so the next time I'd have to eat it, it'd be like, well, I threw salt on it, so now you might like it. Or now it's with this, so you might like it. Eat it. And it just became this thing where it's like a lot of times it felt like a punishment to have to eat shit and eat healthier food. And I just hated it. And so it created this weird relationship with food where I will say in the last month or so, like something I've tried adopting is what my aunt actually introduced when she had kids, called a no thank you bite. And so like when Bridget would make asparagus, I'd be like, oh fuck, I hate asparagus. But I'm like, I'm going to have like 2 or 3 pieces of it, and that'll be my no thank you bite. I at least want to get it on my plate. I want to try to eat it, see if I can start implementing new foods and better foods into my diet. And then it's like the last couple of times, like she's made like asparagus or green beans or something like that. It's like, now I'm actually going back for a second helping because like she makes it in a way that I actually like it. And I'm trying to change my relationship with food based on how I grew up with it. And I know a lot of this may seem very obvious, but I think a lot of it has come from going to therapy and kind of trying to change your behavioral conditions, like things that you think or the way you've been conditioned to do something and breaking out of that. And for me, in the last month and a half or so, I feel like it's the few things that have kind of led to more successes of like, yeah, I don't really want to eat vegetables because I just have a bad relationship with them from how I grew up, but I'm gonna try. Because maybe I'll find something. And the other part of it is too, is I also have really bad like acid reflux and a lot of like things like that. So like peppers and stuff like that, like, they just fuck me up. But I'm trying to get better about taking like a Prilosec or something and then be like, all right, let's try to introduce some peppers and some other things.
Don't do that. Don't do that.
No? Okay.
Don't do that. Prilosec has just been battled in like a fucking class action lawsuit about omeprazole and the esophageal cancer. I've had a very strange journey with food. Very similar story to you. I mean, I was, there were definitely some horror stories from my stepdad, like some force feeding type, shit as a kid, where you don't really understand why as a parent, it is your job to get your kid to try new food. Sorry, like you got to expose them to different things. But I think what we're trying to figure out in this conversation at this point is like, how do you communicate as a child's being raised, like what the value of food is, how to look at food in a positive light, and how to have a relationship with food that is based on health and practice, right? Where you can base it on how you feel, and base it on like moderation, base it on things like portion control, in imbibing in certain foods versus other foods. And as you're an adult, ideally, you'd find a better, healthier avenue to access those types of things. I still have a very complex relationship with food. I mean, it's going into this style of like bodybuilding. I mean, I definitely can't, like, there are periods of time where a lot of people will eat, like you even said earlier, some people just, you don't eat because you're hungry, you eat because you're depressed or any other reason, perfectly valid. But I think that for a lot of people, like when you're, you have this complex relationship with food and it becomes an addiction or becomes something you're gorging yourself on, something you feel unhealthy from. You got to navigate back from that and find what you eat that is not only will bring you enjoyment, but long-term health benefits as well. I don't really eat. I love food so much. It's crazy. I have definitely shifted from, I was a picky eater as a kid, picky skinny eater, even into my teen years and very early 20s. But as I traveled more and as I really try to branch out more and process a better relationship with food in terms of how it made me feel long-term, short-term, how does eating nothing how does going to the gym fasted feel versus going in on, dim sum 2,000 calories for breakfast, like what's the difference? How does that feel? What do I benefit more from depending on what I'm going through at the time? If I'm bulking or if I'm cutting, I'm eating, I'm pretty much just strictly eating meats and complex carbs, no sauces, no sugars, no processed foods. And if I'm on a bulk, I'll try to cater my diet, but for the most part, if I'm on a dirty bulk, I'll eat whatever the fuck I'll eat. Fucking,
I think I've been on some food diets or food excursions with you on those.
Yeah, you I love food, man. I'm a food guy. I fucking Will and I will go toe to toe just eating food, because we both love it. There's very few things I won't eat or won't try, and it's a weird like thing to think about, because I don't believe in like a victim mentality of like, oh, my dad told me I had to eat this and now I can't eat anything. But in a way, it's like, fuck, even going through that, working myself out of it as an adult has led me to, just as you just described, where you're like, you know what, I've got my no thank you bite. And just by doing that, just by making that conscious decision to fight that, impulse of trauma, I'm liking these asparagus now. Maybe I'll try it with something else. Maybe it is beneficial for me. And then maybe in a couple of years, you're going to fucking love it. You might find grilled asparagus recipe. You just crush it. You love it. Part of that is just working through that experience and finding what works best for you, man. I think it's really cool that you're on that journey. And you mentioned therapy helping you get there. I think that's crucial. I did an interview with Heart Support Fest on this last one that we did with DGD, and talked with her in kind of a similar conversation that we've had in the past with mental health journeys. And I think that that just can't be overstated, like going to some type of therapeutic practice and at least engaging in the exercise of self-awareness, like finding and pinpointing places in your life that are bringing you unhappiness or dissatisfaction. Are you on the internet 12 hours a day, you know, just fucking spewing hate? Are you like just, you know, so depressed you can't even move, you can't even get out of bed in the morning? Like, what can you do to address that? What can you do to wake up in the morning and say, okay, well, let's try some things. You got to at least be willing to try, you know? I get that there are a lot of barriers with, you know, the American healthcare system in terms of getting financial access to healthcare. And I hope that we continue to improve those measures for people over time, but everyone should have access to, you know, at least the ability to hire a mental health professional and get some type of help through therapy. I think it's really important for a lot of people coming into the world that we live in. It's, you know, it's completely different than when you and I were kids. It's absolutely, you know, not to sound like a fucking boomer. I got enough gray hairs for sure. But it's definitely a different world. And I think that we have a lot of complex, nuanced issues for young individuals to sort through. It's probably wise that we continue to invest in mental health care for those individuals so that they can become what they want to be, you know, be all that they can be. So
I feel like sometimes I'm jealous of kids growing up now because I feel like they have better tools to work through family issues, their own issues, whatever. I feel like there's less of a, I don't want to say a destigmatization, but I feel like there's a less stigma attached. Like if you're like, oh, I go to therapy or I have, you know, whatever. I feel like there's more of a social understanding of that not everyone is okay, that we all are different and we go through different things and we have different thoughts and feelings and emotions. And at times I'm jealous that like kids get to kind of grow up in this space where I feel like they are encouraged to be more of who they want to be or who they feel they are. But at times I also feel like I'm torn because I wonder if, and I don't want to get on this tangent because we always end up on this tangent, but I also wonder if because of the mediums that they have available to express these things, if it's also a double-edged sword and also it creates more of like the adverse of like, I put myself out there hoping to find a community and in turn I was basically shit on and it forced me further into myself.
Yeah, you can't get me started on social media, bro. We'll be here for like 6 hours.
Sorry. It's something I've been thinking about.
I hate it, bro. I hate it. I think it's absolutely evil. I cannot stress that enough. I'll say it in every interview I ever do. If you can find a way to get off social media in any capacity, I would highly recommend it to every single individual that hears this message. I think that
I'm going to grab more water. Keep talking.
Yeah, great. Grab it. But that's, yeah, I stand by that for sure. I do not think it's good. I think that, you know, you can make every argument for technological advancement, you know, advancement of communications between individuals, staying in touch with family members. I've heard every excuse in the book, but every time I've ever talked to anyone in any business setting, especially in the music industry, it's like such a faux pas to not use social media. But every single time, bro, I go out on tour, I meet all these people. They're so nice. They're like, Andrew, hey, how's it going? You know, great show. Where do I find you on Instagram? I said, I don't use that. I haven't used that in 5 years. Well, you don't use nothing. You don't use Bandpage. Nope. I don't have the logins. I don't use that. And they go, man, I wish I could do that. That's every single response verbatim is, man, I wish I could do that. And it's like, well, no one's like forcing you at gunpoint to log into Instagram. You realize this, right? Like they'll say, well, yeah, but I got to use it for my business. I got to use it for my social networking. I got to use it for this. It existed long before humanity existed long before social media. It'll exist long after it's gone. I think that there are more engaging ways to meet people and engage in a community and build something that's not built on machines that are built off of AI programming, lobotomy methods. Like these social media companies are built for addicts, man. They're built to keep you addicted and clicking the most hateful, terrible content that you possibly can. How many times you've been on a social media and just starts feeding you absolute bullshit, like polar opposite to what you even think or feel? How many times has it grifted you because you've talked about, something that you want to save up for, and it's just inundating you with ads, right? It's getting you to
Weirdly,
spend
it's
money.
never the $1 million I keep talking about that I want.
Yeah, it's never how to get $1 million for free. Yeah, it's always some scam, bro. I don't know. I can only speak from my own personal experience. I think everybody can attest to that. I have been monumentally more happy than I've ever been off of social media. And the longer that I'm off, the longer that feeling is solidified within me. I just gotten to a point. I just don't, it's not even, I don't see the point behind it in a lot of respects. Everybody in the industry when I first got off thought I was an idiot. They told me I would never be successful in music. 7 Billboard charting records later, I'm more successful than I've ever been in music, despite not having it for 5 years. And Eidola is not a social media band. I'm really excited for the next phase of Eidola in particular because of that. Like, I've been pretty outspoken about this for a long time. And so it's like, okay, well, what can you do that's actionable? What can you do that's like, that just shows you're willing to put your money where your mouth is on this, is kind of how I looked at it for myself. And it's really cool. I actually had a meeting with Sean Haydorn at Rise and Sony BMG last week, and they approved all of my plans for the Eidola rollout for our double album. And
one
so
single.
I'm really
one
stoked.
single.
Yep, just one single, 15 months. No, it's going to be really cool, man. I'm really excited. I can't share a ton about it at like right up front right now, but what I can tell you is we have our double album that you and I've talked about. It's 26 songs. It's divided into 2 separate releases. The releases are completely polarity wise juxtaposed. It's a similar concept to Degeneratera in terms of how it's laid out musically.
Love it.
And it's the final installment of our theological concept series in Eidola, and it covers all the bases. So the way that I've described it, like I pitched it to our label, is I said, you think about some of our most popular songs with Eidola, and it tends to be songs like either Humble Ledger and Low Tie, or songs like Mutual Fear and Caustic Prayer. Like, it's either really pretty, somber, melancholy ballads, or it's like fucking rippers. It's, it's like kick you in the teeth, start the pit up, fucking jammers. And so we're like, okay, how can we take the concept and polarize it in this really cinematic, eclectic, and larger than life way that encapsulates both territories of our sound? How can we explore those more intensely? And so I took that concept, ran with it, and just went yin yang with it. I just said, okay, here we go. We're going to take the first half. It's going to be drop tune, 7 strings. We're going to go drop G, drop A, B flat, and we're just going to go hard, like sonically, lyrically, thematically chaotic, focused on death, destruction, loss, pain, sorrow, hatred, resentment. There's a lot of lyricism in there that's really focused on like all the great wars throughout human history and theological history, all of the genocide, even from a historical or theological perspective that we're always engaged in. This was like violence. I would say it was if I had to describe it in one word, it would be violence. The second half, however, is the polar opposite. It's how could we sonically, thematically, and lyrically explore peace, forgiveness, compassion, community, love, overcoming obstacles, right? Heroicism, standing up for the downtrodden, like the most peaceful, unified, community-based periods of human history and theology. How can we focus on that? And sonically, bringing in symphonic orchestra, a lot of piano layering, vocal, a lot more dense vocal harmonic content, less abrasive content. And so it's, as far as a piece of music goes, this is definitely Eidola's like crowning piece of music, I would say, just out of how ambitious it was to undertake going and doing this type of thing. So obviously you can imagine my crazy ass going to the label and being like, yeah, so, you know, I know everybody's doing singles and shit, but I have like a psychological band that is, you know, it's got all these different genres. I want to do 26 songs. So obviously, yeah, you can see like how the music industry is. They're very hesitant. They're like, okay, well, we need the funding for these things. We need to do music videos. And I'm out here as like an artist, just trying to get things moving on it. So,
right.
Where we're at with it, we had originally had some plans to come out with the first half this year, finish recording the second half, and have that come out early next year. But right after we got done recording the first half, right? We got done recording the first half,
which I think is when we last talked.
Yes, yeah, it's mixed, it's mastered, it's ready to go. Mike Somm crushed it, absolute legend. I'm super proud of it, and we filmed a music video in Las Vegas that's just awesome. It involves me. I'm sword fighting. There's like crazy. We did it in the desert. There's this crazy thing. It's nuts. It's going to be awesome. But after we start putting the pieces together for this content to start rolling out, we found out our drummer, Matt Hansen, his wife was pregnant with their first baby. And so they actually just welcomed him into the world last week. His name is Hugh Eric Hansen. He's their first baby. And just amazing. I mean, he's always wanted to be a father. It's just an incredible moment. But we had talked about how we were going to put this out in terms of how we could really do it justice for the way that we want to do it for our fans. How can we make sure that Matt's involved throughout the entire process, that he has time home with his family to like actually be with his newborn baby. And we were looking at the schedule in combination with Dance Gavin Dance's schedule, which has been absolutely hectic. I mean, Dance Gavin Dance, we just finished writing. It was me, Matt, Will, and Sergio. We got in a room together and we wrote 10 songs in 10 days, which was insane. My brain was fucking fried. I've never been in an environment like that, because we would write and demo right in a row. So like we would get there, like I'd go to the gym in the morning, get my stuff, pick up Sergio and Will. We'd go over to the studio, meet Matt there, and we would just grind and we would just start writing. And we would write a song, and then we'd go across the hall in Black Box Studios in Las Vegas. And Spencer from Periphery, that's where he works out of, that's his studio. And so he would bring us in and we would start tracking. We'd start demoing the songs. And we would kick out 1 to 2 songs a day, and just we'd write and we track, and then we'd have 10, 12, 13-hour days, and just the most insane DGD material that I've ever been a part of. Really, really stoked on how that all came together. But when you think about all the recording that goes into that, we have to record all the instruments. Then I have to fly out and do vocals with John and Tillian in a couple of separate sessions, and then the Jackpot Juicer tour starts, and then it's pretty much the end of the year. We have one other tour that's international to announce with that band, and that's pretty much it. But to be able to, like, we talked about every plan in the book, bro. We talked about doing some split tours with some of our friend bands. We talked about doing some mini support tours here and there, and just none of it felt right. Like we kept going through thinking about, okay, how can we put this record out and give it its best shot? Like its best live performances, its best music video content, its best engagement with the actual followers and the fans of what we do. And none of the options felt right, man. They kicked us like 50 options of what to do, and nothing felt like it was going to do the album justice, especially with this being a double album and kind of being our last like big concept album. Nothing really felt like it was going to do it justice. It just felt like it was cut. It was selling it short for all of us artistically and in multitude of other ways. And then taking Matt away from his kid, I just don't feel like any of us felt like that was justified. And we don't want to do it without him, because he's such an integral part of the group. And it's a passion project for us. It's like, it's something that we do because we love it, not because we make bank off of it or anything. So we had a discussion, and I think the plan moving forward is that we're going to finish recording the second half by the end of the year. We have enough time that I can go out and record everything else that I need to do for the second component of the record. And then we have a really cool thing that we're going to be announcing that's going to be our rollout for both albums. So we're going to roll out 26 songs. We're going to do all the vinyl printing, all the CDs. It'll all be out next year within a 12-month window. We'll have tours behind both cycles for the record. I mean, it's going to be a very busy year for Eidola. And that's kind of what the intention is like to really go all out for the project and do it justice that we feel like it deserves and that we feel like our fans deserve from us. And so it's definitely a bit of a wait, but this is every Eidola record I've ever done has been delayed by a year every single time. it's like it happens without fail. It happens Degenerate Terra, it happened on Speak to Listen, it happened with The Architect. This one, at least I think for us, it was good reasoning. It's not quite as long of a wait as we've done before. And we're really excited. We're going to be launching like a community-based environment that I'm really excited about. That's going to allow us to like do the social media thing, like the thing that people like in bands, which is the content, right? Like you should listen. Generally, you're going to listen to a band because you enjoy the thing that they make, right? You enjoy the songs that they write. You enjoy the visuals that they provide. Like, you know, what if I can give you an environment to interact with us that's direct, you know, and it's not on a web, it's not on fucking some Patreon or some other shit. This is going to be completely ours. And so I'm excited to show people it's a very unique style to roll everything out. But it's a lot of content. We're going to have a bunch of music videos that I'm really proud of. Some treatments that I had a direct hand in. The music's insane, man. I think I've written between those, the 26 Eidola songs, the 12 or so DGD songs, and then some other solo material. I think I've written like 45 songs in the last 15 months.
Jesus.
So I'm inspired, man. I would say, like, I'm really excited. This is a part of, like, there was a period where I was so depressed in 28. I mean, when we had some of our first conversations, man, I was so depressed about the music industry and the world and my life, and just, I didn't think I could do it. I didn't think I could keep doing it. I was definitely going to quit music on multiple occasions. I didn't think I was good enough. I didn't think I could hack it. I didn't think, you know, a million things. I thought I was going to quit multiple times. And there was a period where I couldn't write almost anything for almost a year. Like I had, it was like the well had run dry. It was like, what the fuck? Like I couldn't write anything substantive that I was really proud of for almost a year. It was like 10 months or something, just nothing. And, now it's like the faucet. It's like I have the faucet on. I've got the hose on. I've got another sink on another project that's running. Like, I'm really excited, man. I'm really excited for what's coming in terms of the music. So, yeah, it's gonna be dope.
There's so much that I want to comment on in everything you've said over the last little bit. I think like one of the, and there's not really a linear fashion that I feel like I need to hit any of these things on, but just kind of hitting them as I think about them. But I mean, one of the first things as I listened to everything, and I wanted to say this, and I've been meaning to say this kind of throughout the conversation, and I don't think I've even sent it to you just in general, but like, so for those listening, and I know I've said this to you, like I had never seen Eidola. And, you know, I always say in our conversations, like, I'm not really the DGD fan. I'm the Eidola fan because I found your music when I was booking shows and I was excited to be like, I love this music and I want to see it live. Ironically, you weren't able to do the show that I booked, and then DGD became your focus. So like Eidola just wasn't tour. It wasn't really the focus at the time. And the infrequent touring you did was usually not really anywhere near me, or at least B markets. And so it became this thing where it became this thing where I had never seen the band that I know you for. When I talk about you, even when I do the intros and outros, it's Andrew from Eidola, not Dance Gavin Dance. And it's this thing where on this last tour cycle for The Architect, it's the first time I got to see you play shows. And it became this thing where I feel like it was the first time getting to see you. See you as the artist that I
as the performer that you know me as,
right, but having never gotten to see you as that performer. That side of you has always existed kind of in a mental state, like where it's like, oh, I think this is what it'd be like. And YouTube and all that kind of stuff exists, but it's a completely different thing when you see it in person.
not the same. Yeah, definitely.
And the thing is I remember we were in Atlanta and I didn't get to hang out with you that day. Like I saw you a couple of times, but I couldn't get your attention to be like, hey, I'm here. And it was this thing where, so the first time I'm seeing you, even before the show, which it would be interesting to see if it would change how this experience was for me. But I think you are actually doing Caustic Prayer. And if I remember correctly now, having seen you guys twice on that tour, I think that's, maybe I'm jumping the gun, but I think it's where you usually would be like, oh, like pull out your phones or whatever. And there's like a kind of more of an interactive part to the song.
Yeah, that one's Low Tie, but yeah, it's like Low Tie, Caustic Prayer, I think was the set list of that one. Yeah, they're
okay.
Like right now.
So it became this thing where there's a moment during Caustic Prayer, and even when I hear the song, like because today I was listening to it even, and it's now the image I get when I listen to the song is, there's kind of a moment where you're not singing and it's kind of an instrumental break. And you're kind of like seeing you in Atlanta. I can still kind of picture it in my head, like where you're smiling and you're looking at everybody. And I remember I was smiling and Bridget looked at me and she was like, why are you smiling? And I was like, because like, that's my friend. And like, he's doing the thing that I know him for. And that like, I think makes him who, like the incredible person that he is, not to take away from what you do in DGD or being a musician or anything like that, but like, this is the thing that makes me think of you, like, and your creative output. And I go, and there's people here. And like they're having a great time, and it's like this moment, and it's like it's the moment I know that when he sees it from his perspective, I assume that this is what makes it all worth it. And
definitely 100%. That tour in particular, man, that the headliner that we did in November was like, it really made me want to keep going with this project because it, historically is like it's been a great project. It's been a lot of fun. I put a lot of time and work and hard effort into it, and just like with any band, it's a slow grow, but it's always like you look back on it and it's crazy. I mean, I was doing tours with like a lot like Birds, where I was the merch guy for Stolas. It was Stolas, Cianvar, a lot like Birds.
The Harvard tour?
Oh, the Venetia Fair was the opening.
Oh, Joe. That's how I found out about you guys.
Yep. Yeah.
Now he's a nice man kills.
Yeah. Joe Cutie. We go way back, man.
Yeah.
That was the first tour I ever did. I think I was like 22 or 23 years old, something like that. I think it was 23. I think Kurt turned 30 on that tour. I'm 31.
Oh shit.
And so many stories from that tour, man. But it was so crazy because at the time, I mean, they were playing shows to like 20 people, bro, like 40 people. 50 people, you go to El Paso, Texas, no one shows up. You play at a VFW in Rhode Island and 10 people braved the storm to get there. Right? And I remember at the time thinking, this is crazy, man. We're out here in a van. Everybody's coming to the shows. This shit's popping. And then, but then you do it with your band. You play it with Eidola, and it's your first ever headliner in a van, and you're all fucking 20 something years old. No one knows who the fuck you are, and you play to 50 kids. And you're like, damn it, why? Man, I wish 100 people would be here. I wish 300 people would be here. And then you get to where Eidola is now, where it's like we sold out the El Rey in Los Angeles, which is like almost 900 people. We sold out the Goldfield in Sacramento, and we oversold it at 660 people. I mean, like that, those might be fucking, small numbers to bigger bands, but DGD was not doing those types. DGD was doing those types of rooms when I started seeing them after Tillian was in the band. I mean, I started going, the first DGD show I ever went to was in Salt Lake City, and it was at a place called In the Venue, and there was maybe 65 people there. It was on the Rise Records tour with Memphis fucking Mayfire.
Yep.
And Secrets. Yep. And they did that tour in Salt Lake, and it was like 100 kids tops paid for that show. I remember Eidola opened for DGD. The first time we opened for them was on a routing show to that tour. We did B markets. We did like Joliet and Springfield and Black Sheep in Colorado Springs. And I remember that tour, and it was, I mean, dude, like 200-300 people, you know, like max on some of these shows. And that was back in 2015. Right. So if you think about that, so I joined up with them. It's been 8 years, and that's been, you know, it's been a grower over those 8 years. And so now, yeah, it's amazing that Dance can play 4,000 cap rooms, but to see Eidola grow, it's something that I have a lot of ownership in. DGD is a very collaborative project. It really is. I mean, every musician in that band functions at an extremely high level. They expect absolute perfection from themselves and from everyone else in the project. And so it's a very high-minded, like fucking intense project. It's very collaborative. Everybody's like the alpha in this situation. Everybody's going for the gold every time. Whereas Eidola is made up of a lot more in terms of like their own space as artists. They're very humble. They have other avenues, like, you know, other careers that they engage in that they're really passionate about, and they're great musicians. But when it comes to Eidola, the great majority of the content comes from my brain, and that's just like the factual reality of how the songs come together. Is like I sit down and I will write them. I'll write the guitar, I'll write the bass, I'll write all the melodic content, all the piano, and I'll write the drums. And then Hanson will come in and dramatically improve the drums because I'm not a drummer. And then Sergio will come in and he'll be Sergio. He'll do his Sergio thing and he'll fucking shred like he always does. He'll lay down his guitar parts, and then we put the record together. And Matt Domer's been amazing as well throughout that process. He comes in and especially with vocals, the last couple of cycles, the new album, his vocals are all over it as a heavy screaming vocalist. His lyrical contributions were amazing. I mean, the guy's just incredibly talented. And the second half, he and I've actually been writing that at length the past 6 months, and he's been coming to the table with some really incredible guitar work that he's been working on intensely for the last couple years, really trying to branch into songwriting versus just playing. And it's been really cool, man, to see the evolution of the people that you're in bands with. But I'm really excited, man. It's going to be a great, I just can't tell you how excited I am. It's going to be awesome. I'm really proud of the music that we've been able to make as a team, as a unit. So
it's been interesting to be a part of the journey of the band for clearly not the beginning of it, but like I'd say 70%.
The better part of the part of the functional aspect of it. For sure.
like the more like beyond a local scene side of it.
Definitely.
And it's been interesting because I feel like on a personal level, it's been interesting to see your relationship with it all, where there were times where you were mad at the thing that allowed you to have the time and the budget to spend on your creative outlet and the music business side of things, and how it can kind of make not the thing you want and that you're passionate about be presented as such, like almost like it's an afterthought because DGD is the thing. So, you know, to speak to listen when it came out, you know, I remember us talking about how you're like, yeah, it sucked. Like I didn't really get to support it, and it was almost like it was an afterthought, and it obviously wasn't to me, and and your relationship with DGD and I think the band and the music industry at the time was very volatile, because it was almost like, yeah, I get to do this thing that pays my bills and gives me the thing that everyone would think they'd want, but creatively and artistically I'm robbed because I didn't get to showcase this side of me and really present it in the level that I feel like it should have been, like all the blood, sweat, and tears and everything I put into it. And I don't even get to kind of like experience or share that with anyone. It just kind of exists and then it's done. And I feel like there was obviously a more interesting duality to The Architect. And as I listened to it more, and I think, and sometimes, you know, and I was thinking about this today, actually, when listening to The Architect, because I feel like when it came out, like maybe I was too close to you and knowing the behind the scenes stuff of potentially what went into the architects. So like that's what I heard when I kept hearing the record is kind of a lot of vitriol and a lot of, you know, upset, like being upset with things maybe about yourself you don't like, the industry you don't like, your circumstance that you don't like, and working your way through it musically and lyrically and finding the themes that you were bringing into it that apply to it to make it, you know, more grandiose. But when I listen to the record now, it's interesting because I feel like it's a catharsis. It's something that had to happen. And it's one of those things that, you know, kind of correlating therapy and so forth to a lot of what we talk about expanding ourselves and the understanding of who we are and who we want to be and how to get there and kind of getting out of our own way. I feel like the architect really is something where when I kind of think about it from that prism on the journey I've been on with weight loss and stuff like that, I think maybe is making it more present. But I hear that these aren't things where before where I heard you and I felt sorry and I felt sad. Now I hear these songs, and when I hear them, I realize it's an understanding and that it's something that I think you have to come to, you have to kind of earn. And it's funny because when I hear you, and this is kind of one of the things when I was saying earlier, like there's so many things about what you've been saying about your journey with the band yourself and everything, where I kind of want to pick little pieces out. And this is kind of my thing where I'm like, you know, we've talked about several times, the last time we talked and even now, where you're saying, you know, this is going to be the last of the big thematic records and all this kind of stuff. And at times I hear an underlying message of there's finality, that this is done. I no longer need to speak to this because Eidola is more of a concept from start to finish. It's a story, it's a lesson. And once I get to the end, I no longer have anything to teach you. Everything I have to say is contained within these 4, 5, 6 records, depending on how far on either side you want to go. And it becomes this thing where I feel like the architect is kind of the beginning of what I hear this sonic journey of someone trying to find themselves, someone trying to make sense of the world. You know, even going back to Genitera, I don't necessarily know what that phrase means. It's a great sounding record. I remember that was what intrigued me when I got the email. I was like, Genitera, what the fuck is this? All right, I'll open this email from Joe. And as I listened to a song, you know, like Second Temple, and like even the way you broke that record down, where there's obviously, to me, seemingly like philosophical passages within these things you're taking, lessons you're learning. This is lesson 1, this is lesson 2, this is lesson 3. And then maybe the part of Genitera as a record going into speak to listen. You should speak, but more so listen. That's the more focused part. That's the end of this thing, to where when you get to the architect, it's everything you've been learning. And it's a little more focused in its aggression. It's a little more understanding and nuanced, and I feel like compassionate in the more slower parts. And I feel like it really is painting this picture of a person growing. And that has been the thing today when I listen to the newest record, and I've been listening to it, that I feel like that is the conclusion I came to. And I've been wondering, because we've been talking about this next double album and maybe that it's the end. And, you know, I picked up, maybe it's a nonverbal clue where you're saying I'm working on solo material. To me, Eidola is your solo material as I've come to know it. But if you're telling me that there's solo material, then I'm like, okay, then Eidola as the vehicle and vessel for what you need to say is done. Now maybe solo material for you is Andrew Wells, and we get to finally see who you really are. I know that's a very long-winded fucking thing.
I love it, dude. Yeah,
things
you're
I've
doing
been thinking of
bro. I like
as you've been talking, and thoughts I'm having about you as a musician, the musical journey you've gone on, the personal journey you've gone on, even in these podcasts where we can kind of pinpoint these things. And that's the one thing. It's funny, as much as I hated the idea of having repeat guests, you're the perfect example of why having a repeat guest is fucking awesome, when the person is willing to kind of share and be immersive in their experiences. Yeah. Because I feel like we can kind of see this journey over time.
Definitely, man. I think you made a lot of really great points that I really appreciate hearing how you process and interpret the art that I make. It's that alone is like an astounding thing. Like, I made a thing that you resonate enough with that you have like a view of it, like you've interpreted it in a way that's personal to you, and you're spot on with a lot of things. Like, when I went into the project, it's a human experimentation project. It's like I write from a lot of different purviews, from Degeneratera onwards. It's like philosophy, psychology, theology, history. I mean, you name it. I'm trying to pull from the wealth of human experience throughout all of history, right? And so I use a lot of real world references, and they're hidden. I mean, even the name Degeneratera comes from a physics concept based on the heat death of the universe, where there's a third stage of entropy called the degenerate era. If you look at that concept and then you tie that in with how some of the Hindi concepts of like Brahman versus Atman, or the Kali Yuga, the Yuga cycles, you can kind of pinpoint a lot of the philosophy that I engage in, or a lot of thematic and theological thinking of where my brain has developed over time. And you made a point with like the journey of how many times throughout this where I've had a conflict or a struggle with the music industry side, and through therapy and just actually living through it and experiencing it, I've come to a much better, more healthy relationship with understanding that there's a balance of paying your dues, right? You have to really earn your keep in the music industry. It's extremely cutthroat. I would not recommend it to most people, as far as making a career out of it. But if you can go in with the right intention and you can say, I want to start a band because I want to create. I want to be a creationist in a way. I want to create something that comes from my soul, and I want to give it to others, right? If you're coming from that place and you have no other expectations, I think music and art, regardless of what mediums you use, is a very healthy thing to engage in. I think it's very enriching for your soul and your mind. And where a lot of people fall short is when they get wrapped up in the industry side, where they tie their identity to this one thing. They say, I am this. I am Andrew from Eidola. That's the only thing I could ever be. I'm Andrew that's going to join Dance Gavin Dance in 2018 and gets denied the opportunity. And, you know, I've tied myself to this identity for so long, I can't even picture what that's like without it, right? That becomes very harmful. And that applies to any facet of life. If you hitch yourself to one thing and one thing only, I think you're going to find yourself pretty lost and disappointed at various points in your life when that one thing gets shattered or moved or changed in some way, and you can't change with it. And you reach an impasse. Very, very bad for your mental health. And that happened to me on a number of occasions in the music industry, where I felt like I either wasn't being valued enough, respected enough, like my music hadn't reached a certain amount of people. I mean, it was a fucking pity party, bro. Like it isn't, and it is, right? You want to give it the space that it needs to grow through it. You don't want to minimize the fact that you feel a certain way. But at the end of the day, what are you left with? Like if these people aren't respecting you the way that you want, change your outlook, change your mentality, respect yourself first, and then go out and go and work harder, outwork them, outshine them. Like it's up to you to do that. And that's what I decided to do over the years. Is I said, you know what? No, I'm not doing the social media. I'm not doing this other stuff. I'm not going to be a skinny guy anymore. I'm not going to fucking take shit from anybody. I'm not going to, like, they were just boundaries that I had to set over time, where I said, no, there's a certain window of tolerance that I have. And if I keep things within that window of tolerance, everything's kosher. Everything's amazing. My life functions the way that it's supposed to. When I allow things to go outside of that window of tolerance is where manic behaviors or suicidality creep in, intrusive thoughts. I mean, you name it. I think that I had to grow through that as a 20-year-old, 25-year-old, 27-year-old kid at the time, you know, like in the music industry. That's what I did. Is like, and anyone would tell you, especially this like particular subsection of the music industry, there's like labels and agents and all these other things that all the other guys don't ever want to talk about. Like, it's a very volatile industry. I'm not going to name names, but I know a lot of people in a lot of bands that get fucked over. If you're not like an original providing member, there's a lot of contract language that will fuck your shit up. That will rob you blind and leave you fucking resentful. It's your responsibility to carve your own path in that. And the reason that they have a perceived leg up on you is because they have the fans or they have this income stream. It's like, if you continue to double down on yourself, work on yourself, continue to proliferate and build good relationships and connections, try to treat people as best as you can. I think that in my experience, that's what led me through it. That's what allowed me to grow from those points of contention in the music industry to say, you know what? I'm sick of feeling mad all the time. I'm sick of feeling slighted all the time. Like, I need to find a better, healthier outlet for this where I'm engaged in music in a positive, healthy, cathartic way again. And The Architect was really an explorative journey on cutting out the parts of me that were holding me back, cutting out the parts of me that were holding me down and keeping me a slave to my own mindset of just being a victim, being, you call yourself all sorts of names. Everybody does this to themselves, they'll demean themselves into the ground, and it's just not healthy to do that. You got to love yourself. You got to respect yourself, and you got to try to lift yourself up. And The Architect was a cathartic musical experience for me in shedding those layers of what was really holding me back from my potential of just having a more positive interaction with music in general. And so I think I'm super glad and grateful to hear that you can hear that in the music, that you can hear both sides of it, knowing me personally and what I went through to get there, and then knowing me on the back half of it and even how it's applied to yourself. I always try to write music from that standpoint, like a painting that you can go back to regardless of where you're at in your life, and you're ideally will learn new things from it every time that you revisit it. That's my intention every time that I try to write a cohesive piece of music. I might have other little intentions on what's this song about, how do I explore these themes, but in terms of an album concept, that's really what I try to embody. And to your last point about like solo material, Eidola is a solo project in a way, but it's extremely collaborative. I mean, it's led by me in this process of experimentation, but it's with other musicians that really make it its unique flavor, right? It's I don't want to use more food analogies, so I won't, but like it's like you got to have all these cooks in the kitchen to make a truly like diverse, unique meal. And these guys bring a lot to the table that I couldn't do myself, just an alternative perspective on music. Solo material from me would not be relegated to this genre. I would put it that way. I've had a lot of different conversations with a lot of different people, a lot of musicians that I've worked with in the industry that are also fed up with just how the industry standard is towards artists a lot of the times. I mean, you made a joke to me, what was it, yesterday?
Today.
Enjoy your 0.00001 cent stream income because you listen to Ancient Temperament. Yep. Yeah, just things like that. It's not always labels and agents and all this. It's like there are a lot of things that try to take as much money from the actual artist as possible, before it gets down to the artist at the base level. And so in terms of solo material like that's going to be a unique, independent opportunity for me to explore different musical territory with a new crew of people. And that could be evolving and changing. Could be some people could be some people you never heard of. Could be producers you've never heard of in a genre that you didn't expect. I mean, you probably expect it, but it's going to be really cool, man. I'm really excited. And because I've grown through that therapeutic process, going to therapy every week and really engaged in this type of attempt at self-awareness, I'm more ready than ever to take on those responsibilities in those projects and deliver and really come to the table with something new and something fresh. As far as Eidola goes, though, we've discussed it. I think you're right in saying like the piece of music that I've delivered with this double album, and then in the context of the entire concept, the theological philosophical concept, this will be everything I need to say within that context. I think within how it's perfectly woven as a narrative, as a piece of lesson learning from start to finish, all of the symbolism, all of the references, like I'm really proud of how it's built. I think it's built in a really interesting way that's going to bring people back to it if they give it a chance. And whatever Eidola does next after that, like 2025 onward, I think it will be more of an exercise in how collaborative the band can really be. My vision for the future, this would be like a stretch goal, would be to rent a cabin in Alaska and just have all of our recording equipment and a bunch of gear, go up to see our boy Matt and just sit in a studio for like 2 months, right? You sit there for 8 weeks and it's just us and an engineer, us and a producer. And we just sit in Alaska in the middle of the woods and we write together. It's not me having all these pre-written songs beforehand or, having everything perfectly organized or having a concept ready. Even it would be us in a room together, authentically making music like a band. And I think that would provide its own super unique and interesting piece of music and piece of art. It would be very relevant to whatever success or failures we experience between now and then. We'd be able to ideally verbalize that through music in a really productive way with something that is authentic to us as individuals. So that's like a long goal. I know that's like a big dream, but I would love that. I think it would be sick. I'd go fishing every damn day, dude.
I think it's funny because, like, as you're saying all that, I feel like you're going to become one of those people where you become this person when I talk about it. And I mean, you're already kind of there because it's funny. Like, I shared the same screenshot I had sent you. I was actually listening to that song earlier as well. And I was on my old co-host's Discord server thing. And like one of the tabs is like, what are you listening to now? And I knew probably no one in that Discord thing knew what the Architect was, but I know it's a visually interesting album cover. So if I screenshot it and send it in, someone might be like, oh, what's that? Literally like minutes later, someone commented, I'm intrigued. And I was like, go check it out. And it's a thing where when I kind of think of like a lot of people, you exist as Andrew from DGD. And I always I now associate you, like I've always kind of associated you as Andrew. But it's funny because one of my favorite comments when you listen to other podcasts is like when someone leaves a band, you then have to change their band name or how you associate them. Because it's like when you meet someone on tour, it's like, oh, you're Andy Eidola or you're Andy DGD or something like that. Like that would be how someone probably would put you in their phone. So they know who you are.
Yeah, definitely.
So when you don't exist in that space for someone anymore, and now you're something beyond that, or you've grown, it kind of fucks with people. And it has become this thing where, like, even like I said, sending that same screenshot to someone, I was like, oh, this is Andrew from Eidola. But then I was like, okay, they don't know who Eidola is, so I need to use a different frame of reference to get them to be like, oh, I guess I know who that person is or whatever. And so I was like, oh, I guess most of you would probably know him as Andrew from Dance Gavin Dance. And it's been kind of funny to think about that because it's interesting to think about how we exist for each other. Like, I'm sure to a lot of people, I'm the guy who did we did a podcast with, and you're your podcast guy, or your Grand Rapids guy, or your Michigan guy, Midwest guy, whatever, however or wherever I fit into your box of how you remember me. And it's been interesting to kind of think because since I've gotten to know you, I've actually not really listened to the music because I feel like it's a little bit weird for me at times because I know who you are. So when I listen to these things and I pick up on lyrics or even just kind of themes or ideas or more of an expression, at times it kind of, especially when I hear something like some of the stuff where I feel like I know where the pain and the anger is coming from, it's hard to listen to that. And it's something that as I have befriended so many people And when I get to know some of these people, it's like, oh, I kind of know more of your story. And it's kind of weird to listen to your music because I know where it comes from, or I think I have more of a connection to where it came from. And so this is really,
you're gonna have a real tough time with the new one.
well, and I think honestly, that's why, like, I think, like, in some instances, I think I'm honestly, like, you know, and this is the thing, I think fans as a whole kind of are, we're always like an album behind, because depending on how far radical you go, it's going to take some time to really figure out what we're feeling on that record that is what you were feeling, because it's not what we were expecting. And, you know, I always talk about on this podcast how weird it is for artists, because it's like you're living the things that are going to inspire what you create coming up next that you're making, but we won't hear it for 2 years or a year or however long it takes for you to get that thing out. And then you have to go back and relive that thing to talk about it and then play it and all that stuff. But you're still being inspired to create the new things that we're then going to hear 2 years later. So it's a weird shifting of times and all
you're
that.
Fucking telling me.
And so it just becomes this thing where, you know, it's something I latch onto. And I think for a while, and maybe it's because of the conversation we had around the time to speak to listen, that I didn't really want to listen to that record.
Mm-hmm.
And Degenitera is kind of where I feel like it's sort of, it's still reminds me of, like, as far as relationships go, like, one of my favorite parts of new relationships is the new beginning. It's learning everything new about somebody and like the excitement of learning that person. And so since that was my first record of yours, and also when you and I first started talking, there's like all of those, for as weird as it sounds, romanticized like firsts for us.
Sure.
And it becomes weird to think about music from that perspective. If you ever get to that level where you can have that kind of extra layer of bonding. And when I listen to Genitera, like, that's what I hear. It's the exploratory nature of a relationship, the firsts of everything.
Yeah, you haven't quite,
And
yeah, no, that makes sense.
And it's weird, and it's really taken. And I still really don't really listen to Speak to Listen for the reasons I just said. But like, I have really latched on to The Architect in the last like 3-4 weeks. And I don't know if it's like a subconscious thing of like, because I'm kind of going through this exploratory thing of like trying to be healthy and figuring things out and kind of finding like a new, I don't want to say another why, but a new why, like the purpose.
Sure.
And it's one of those things where maybe I'm picking up themes and stuff like that, where it's like, oh, I feel like this is someone going through the same thing as me. But I feel like personally, I know it is, because that's the era of where you were in your life when you were creating this. So it's interesting that like I wasn't there with you at the time when the record dropped.
But
I was
get it.
I was personally like there, but like mentally and maybe like on a different level I wasn't, and now I am.
Sure.
And so it's interesting to kind of have that connection now, and it's also a part of a different journey of myself at this point at the same time.
That's what I'm all about, man. I love that. I love meeting people like you from all over the world that share that same mentality. I think it's a huge thing. I mean, to give you perspective on the new one too, like I recorded vocals for the new Eidola record. I wrote the rest of the lyrics and recorded the vocals 2 months after Tim died.
Yep. That was going to be what I assumed was going to be.
And I was so it was rough. It was very rough. I'd lost a lot of people that year, but that one in particular still hurts every day. Like I was easily one of my best friends I've ever had. We were like brothers. I genuinely loved Tim with my whole heart. And so going in and having to, you know, like no one in particular, but the music industry they'll laugh at you if you take any time to do anything. Like, you know, oh, you have vocal surgery. Well, it sucks to be you. You got to go on this tour, until you tell them, no, I'm not going on the tour. I have to have vocal surgery. I have to rest so I can do this other tour successfully for your other band that makes more money. Like,
right.
Oh, your dog died. Well, sucks. You got to get on a plane to LA tomorrow. You know, it's like, that's how fucking vicious that shit is at times, right? And it's no one in particular, it's the machine of the industry that treats the artist as disposable. It's been that way since the beginning. It'll be that way till the bitter end. I fully believe that. But my job as an artist is to go outside of that, is to persevere beyond that, is to do what I can to verbalize my experiences in a way that ideally will help other people, will be cathartic for them, will at least give them a frame of reference of some semblance of what they're going through. It would be ideal. And most people in their lives experience loss, and they'll know the heartbreak, the guilt, the anger, the hatred, the resentment. I mean, you can hear it on this new Eidola record. It's pretty intense. I would say it's definitely the most personal release that I've had, and it's worked out in a really cathartic way for me, because I was able to process that pain in a very productive way. That wasn't just me abusing drugs and alcohol or personal relationships. It wasn't me, spiraling into suicidality or looking at my friend who had passed and, backsliding on all the work that I'd done over the past 5 years. I channeled it, I felt Tim was with me throughout the entire process. I felt like he was watching over me and helping me with that process, and just being able to get what I needed to say out. And the second component, I'm glad we did it in this order, because we could have tried to do Flip, we kind of tried to do the cool, happy, everything's fine record first, but it would have been so disingenuous and inauthentic. It would have been absolute dog shit. Everyone who would have heard it would have seen right through it. It happened the way that it was meant to happen, which was allowing me to really get that out and put it out in a way that was healthy for me. And now with Mend, it's a year later since Tim passed, 13 months later. And I still miss him every day. But in terms of how my life has changed, even in the last 12 months, I've definitely had a lot of great realizations, a lot of really intensive work with my therapist, and in my personal relationships and my creative relationships that have I feel like I'm more foundationally established and healthier, and I can participate in that writing process in a more authentic way, where it's like, oh, I can write in a major key again. I can write something. I can write in a major. I can write a funk part and be like, yeah, I could. I want to dance to this. I feel happy or contented or, feel some semblance of grace. So that I think has worked out in a really tremendous way that I'm very grateful for. It's not lost on me. I'm really excited to be able to bring that product, that art to other people that I think could really use it in a world that's so volatile and increasingly confusing. I think that it behooves us to attach ourselves to something that is authentic to the human experience. So I think art has been authentic to the human experience since the dawn of time. It's like a window into the soul for most people. It's like how we can really connect and see each other and validate each other is through expression. And my favorite form of that is with music. I'm not talented in a lot of other ways. I mean, I can pick heavy things up and put them down now, but that's about it. I can cook, on occasion if I'm really like chilling for a little bit. I'm okay at a couple of sports, but like I can't paint for shit. I mean, I can't do visual art at all. So this is my way of expressing myself. I'm really fortunate that it's resonated with enough people at this point. I mean, if you went to I did. You go to the music industry, the people in it, and you're like, yeah, I got this band. It's got a weird name. I got this record. It's got an even weirder name that you can't pronounce. And all of it's like about God and religion and philosophy and theology and human experience is kind of hard to comprehend. Are you guys down to fund it? And they go, I don't know about that, dude. That's a little. And you go, well, I believe in it anyway, so I'm going to go for it. And they go, okay, well, you're talented. Let's try it. And I'm really fortunate that like Will and Sean and Derek and some of these other individuals in the industry saw what I was willing to put in, and at least saw me for me. They saw me for what I could bring to the table as a musician and as an artist. And I'm just trying to embody that as authentically as I can moving forward.
Like I said, I think that was kind of the full circle moment I had when we were in Atlanta and seeing you sing, and seeing actually a pretty packed room. Because I mean, I can't speak to the rest of the tour that you did on the Degenerate tour that I was gonna have you do, but I can definitely tell you what it would have been at our show, which is not much. So it's
30 people tops. Yeah,
not even. It was the Quesara dudes, me, my wife,
18
and like
dudes. Yeah,
pretty much.
It would have been the band package and the promoter and
And it's a thing. Like it's a trip to think about that. Like, had it not been for Joe, and like I don't even know if I've told Joe this. Like, in all the times I've gone to see and hang out with Patrick and Ice Nine, I don't even know if Joe and I have had this conversation where I was like, by the way, think about how weird and like just
dude, no, you should tell him, dude. I love Joe. I went to breakfast with him a few months back. We went to this place called Millie's in LA that's just is phenomenal, and Sergio was there. I love Joe, dude. You should tell him. You should definitely next time you see him at Ice Nine, you should tell him.
It's funny to think about, like, and that's the thing. Like, at times, like, I don't know if it's, I mean, it's possibly psychedelics and drugs and stuff like that that have helped me unlock this thought process and stuff. But it's like, as I get older, like, I sometimes think about these things where it's like what are the odds that like it's not like I would have saw Joe, and I know most of the tours he sent me were garbage, and they're on a Monday and they're like death metal and they want $700 and shit like that with a per diem and or a buyout and something else, and you're just like, dude, fuck.
And they can barely get kids in the door.
Sure. And then it's like it's a 5-band package tour on top of that, so you're like, cool, so I can maybe put a local on it.
There's
no. And so it's like, what are the what are the odds that I happen to look at my phone, happen to decide to like, all right, let's open this email, and then get through the bullshit of like, because let's be real, when you get those presser emails, they're like 19 paragraphs long and like way overcomplicated, and you're like, dude, I don't care if this is like the up and coming folk death metal band from Norway and that Hrthriers from some other band I've never heard of said it's the best thing ever. Like, I don't care. So it's funny to think about like that. I went through all of these things that normally I'd just be like, no. And it was your record. And I was like, kind of had the same thing. I was like, how do you say this name? Like your band name. And then I was like, and then again, because it preys off of my, like, I'm from the East Coast, but I live in the Midwest. So where do I put the enunciation on the vowels? So I'm looking at it going you're trying to see it. And then I'm just like, oh, and it's broken up into temples. Like, what the fuck is this? And I'm like, all right, I guess I'll click on this. Like, I'm not doing anything at my job. And it's just to think about how weird it is that, like, had it not been for all these things where ordinarily I'd just be like, and you're gone. The relationship is gone. None of the things that we've discussed or been a part of in each other's lives would have ever happened. And it's weird to be able to have. By the way, I know what a swig is now after going to Utah.
Yes. Okay. All right, dude. Yeah, this is some Mormon shit right here, dude. Swig for Mormons. No,
Bridget was hella stoked. She was like, "We got to go to a swig," and I was like, "What the fuck is a swig?"
I think they're delicious. I mean, they are like a lot of. It was against the word of wisdom in the Mormon church to drink caffeine for a very long time. It wasn't until I would say the past 5 years, probably 5-6 years, that they laxed on that. And as soon as that happened, it was like soda shops exploded in Utah because they still don't drink coffee. The majority of practicing LDS don't drink like hot drinks a lot of the time, especially if they're highly caffeinated, just coffee drinks. I love coffee. I have a coffee tattoo. That's how much I love fucking coffee. But soda, those soda shops, I mean, they are there. It's like walking diabetes, man. But I just get a little lemonade, after a workout, get a couple sugars in me,
I feel like that could be interesting because it was something I actually really wanted to kind of talk to you about was my time in Utah. Because I feel like parts of my experience were so interesting, and especially in conjunction because like we went to Vegas for a couple of days,
Mhm.
then we went to Zion National Park or we went to Zion, the outskirts of, and then drove like the 20 minutes into Zion to go hike that for the day. And then went back to our B&B like in the middle of nowhere. If Bridget was here and if I felt like texting her, I'd be like, what was the fucking place we stayed at? And like near Zion, because it's like a little hole in the wall. Like it felt like when you see movies and they're like, oh, this is in the middle of nowhere, Texas. Like they don't live around civilization. And it's like you drive up and there's mountain ranges and shit. And then it's like literally like a 2 gas station town and you can drive through it in a matter of like 10 minutes. And
Sure.
it's weird. And it feels like everything's behind the times, kind of, because like even like I just got stared at like in Zion, and I'm like,
"Yep." Did you go to the breakfast spot on the south end before you leave the town?
I do.
Oh, dude.
I do
Next
know.
time you go, bro,
I think I know
there's a little
exactly what you're
breakfast
talking about. But no, we did not. Because we woke
It's
up hella
good, man. I
early
love that shit.
to go and get there before everybody else got there, and it was busy and hot. But it was weird because like we went there, then we went back to Salt Lake back to Vegas for a day, then went to Salt Lake to catch up with the Nothing More guys, and which is where I was supposed to meet you that night. And it's weird because like Salt Lake City, it's like I've talked to you, I've talked to Jeffa from the Used, who grew up around that area over in Provo. I know it's not like super close, like I think it's close, but I don't have it like approximately, like it's like 2 hours away.
Yeah, it's about 35 minutes.
Okay. So it's a thing where like obviously I've heard the stories of people who live in that area, but it's like until you're kind of there and experience it, which is why I kind of love traveling, at least in the States, like because I get a better sense of a place. I was just like, Utah is fucking weird. And like, because like one thing I kept thinking to myself as I'm driving and there's like beautiful mountains and shit everywhere I'm going. And I'm like, is there a point where you're just like, yeah, there they are. You're just driving and you're just like, like the beauty of like mountains being around you, like just natural beauty, or like driving through these fucking mountains as you're going through these canyons and shit, where you're just like, wow, like, oh shit, I need to look at the road because it's winding and I'm going to crash. But I just kept thinking to myself, like, is there a point where you ever get over this? And then I also thought, like, at least over by Zion, where it's more like super small town kind of vibe, that it's like, it feels like a lot of the movies I saw where it's like Tremors. I feel like would have existed over like near Zion, where it's like your little town, you got a grocery store, a couple of gas stations. If something happened to this town, no one would probably know, honestly. Or if something did happen here, people probably wouldn't know because it takes 20, 30 minutes to get anywhere else nearby. And then going from Vegas to Salt Lake, the thing that fucked me up, because we didn't drink when we were in Zion area, was your drinking laws, to kind of make it more correlated to correlated. Yeah. Well, like
you can't buy liquor anywhere outside a state ordained liquor store, basically like a state regulated liquor store. They'll cut your alcohol content in mixed drinks. Like you have to order it with food. There's a lot of.
We didn't have to do that, but.
I think, good. Like, well, that might have been a restaurant breaking the rules.
Sure. I think like one of the things that was crazy to me was like the first night we went to this like dive bar called Dino, or not Dino. Sorry, that was in Vegas. Was called your ex-mom's or ex-wife's club.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah. So we were over there because Bridget had gone before, and like I'm drinking a Jack and Coke, and it's fine. And like I'm like to hear on my cup, like probably got about a third left, and they're like, "Hey, would you like another one?" I was like, "Yeah, sure." Like, I'm finishing, so sure. Like, go ahead and get me another one. And then it's like they'll make it, and then they just hold it out in front of you, like. And I'm like, yeah, go ahead and put it down. They're like, no, you got to finish that one first, and then you can have this one. And it's like, well, why'd you make it then? Like, if I can't have it, like, don't make it till it's done. Then, like, that's stupid. Why would you ask me for a drink if I want another one, but then you make it and make me wait, like make me have to finish my one before you give me the other one? The other thing that was dumb is I could have a shot of whiskey, and obviously, but I can't have it until my whiskey Coke is done. So if I'm drinking a Jack Coke, I can't have a Jack shot, but I could have a tequila shot because it's not what I'm drinking. Then the even more fucked up thing is toward the end when they call last call, some of the bars are open until 2 a.m., but they call last call at 12:45. Which is weird. And then it'd be like, So it's last call, and I'm like, so can I buy like a whole nother round and you just give it to me over this next hour? They're like, no. So then it's like, okay, well then I guess give me a White Claw, give me another Jack and Coke, and I'll take a
you just end
tequila
up
shot.
double fisted.
Well, yeah, but I order all these other things, and it's okay because they're not the same thing. And then it just kept making me go, so clearly it's not the amount of alcohol that you care about. So what is it that makes, like, why do this? It makes no fucking sense. Because if I can order a shot of tequila, have a fucking whiskey Coke, and then get like a White Claw, it's clearly not that you're trying to regulate how, and I can have all of those at one time. It's clearly that now you're not regulating how much I can have. So make it make sense.
Yeah, no, there's they don't. It's a crazy place, man. I love Utah so much. The more I travel to, it is beautiful. It comes down to mentality. Like, I do remember periods of being so depressed and so stressed, like in my early 20s, driving that commute, like working a gig, working a job, like working an hourly job. In my late teens, early 20s, working 2 or 3 hourly jobs sometimes. I mean, I was homeless since I was 16, basically. Like, I had to grind, like getting out, getting my own place and working nonstop. And yeah, there'd be times on those drives where you just kind of tune it out. You're like, whatever. Seen the mountains a million times. But
Right.
that's like a young man's mentality of like not being grateful for everything that is around you, not being grateful to just be able to take a breath every morning and live your life. So that's a pretty first world problem if you're going in some of those beautiful places in the world and you're just completely like, nah, whatever. I don't think like that anymore, ever. Every day I wake up, I try to be very consistent in my routines, but I do try to like take stock of everything, and be grateful for it and make a gratitude list. I mean, I've got this little dog over here, my little dog Teddy. I take him out to the dog park, going on hikes every day, just to practice that gratitude. I think waking up every day and attempting at least to try to pay tribute to life itself, regardless of your belief system. It's like, you're here, you're living, you're a sentient organism. Like, you should probably start acting like it.
I think in my time in Zion, that was like the thing is like, sometimes like it's funny between that and then even going to the Salt Lakes. I sent you the photos from Antelope Island. That it's a thing where like it's tough because like those photos I took, like they inspire me to like be like, oh, I see this thing and it looks very interesting and I want to like commemorate this. But I'm also torn because I'm like, sometimes things can be for you.
Yeah, it takes you out of the moment.
But part of me also was like, if I take a photo of this though, that I can have it at my home and it can like kind of remind me of that moment of like, this is for me. This is why you don't like it. It's such a weird duality. Like when you can kind of step outside yourself for a minute and then you're just like, this is a moment. This is a thing I should remember and I should keep forever. But then you're like, well, I have a way to maybe make it a creative thing. Like, so photography for me was like a thing where I love it and I love seeing something. And like that one I took of like the lake with like where you can see the water and then the mountains and all the clouds and all that stuff. And I was like, that's how I saw it in my head. It wasn't that I edited it a little bit to make it look the way I saw it. But I just kept, as we were going down this like 2-3 mile, like one-way road going each way, like down the lake to get to the island. As we were leaving it, I was like, this is one of those things like I should take a photo of. I should take a photo of this because like it's so cool and I can't stop looking at it. And I'm going to wish I would have taken a photo of it to remember this thing and be like, this was so cool. And it takes me right back there. And then I just literally pulled the car over and Bridget was like, what's going on? What happened? And I go, nothing. I need to take a photo real quick. And like took me like 4 seconds to take that photo. And then we just got back on the road and kept going. And it's one of those things that like when I took a handful of the photos, I was like I look at them now and I'm like, I'm so glad I took those photos. But like I'm also like I'm torn because like I said, it's a duality of like it should be for me, but it's also a creative thing too, where I enjoy trying to bring out this thing as I saw it mentally and trying to bring out the beauty and why like I wanted the thing. It's like, even as I've been looking at the photo behind you, I'm like, someone had that probably same idea. I mean, it looks like I can't tell if it's a bird or if it's actually where the cave is opening on the your right hand side over your shoulder, but it almost looks like a bird's kind of flying by. But I think it's just an opening.
These like some soundproofing panels we put in. There's actually like a huge mountain on this side too. And they're awesome. But yeah, no, it's a balance, man. You gotta take that time. I take more photos now than I think I've ever taken in the past. Like when I travel, like when I just went to Europe, I just took as many photos as I could. I still was living in the moment. I was still an active participant, in witnessing my life. But I'm super glad that I took those photos, because there's some architecture that's just like mind blowing. I mean, we went to this church in Berlin that was just fucking, I've never seen anything like it. I got this cross at a church that John and I went to in Glasgow. That was just, it was incredible. I can't even really put it into words. It was a phenomenal experience. Super grateful I got to travel and experience that, just making art just out of things that come out of my brain. I think that's like a really stupendous thing. It's like crazy to think about sometimes. I like, wow, I put in a lot of work, but I'm very fortunate that I've been afforded the opportunity to do that. And I should be grateful. I should document it so that I have that as a reference. Because there is a line, if it was to the point where like I bring my wife out for vacation and I'm just taking pictures of the food, I'm ignoring her, I'm just doing my own thing, and I'm on social media, I'm trying to get my likes on the gram. It's like, that's some fucking dumb shit. How many people clicked my fucking story today? It was like, fuck you, man. Like, just live your life and fucking stop being a bitch. that's my advice. Just fucking live your life. Document it for you, man. Document it for people you want to show. I show my grandma some of these photos. My grandma, just give you perspective, she has been on one flight her entire life. It was to California and back. That's it.
Okay.
She's never been further west than like El Paso, Texas. Never been out of the country. I mean, like, just never traveled and hasn't got the opportunity. Now she's in her 80s and it's not super feasible to do that from a health perspective. And so when I bring home photos and I'm like, hey, grandma, check this out. We were in Amsterdam. Here's this restaurant we went to. We went to we went to a museum, in Hamburg, or we went to, the Rijksmuseum in Amsterdam. Or some of the shows, some of the Don Broco shows, like documenting that and being like, here's me holding up a guitar in front of 15,000 people, and she looks at that and is just like blown away. It's like, not only is it for me, it's for her, but we're having like an interactive experience. There's a familial bond that's being made there. It's not like, hey, grandma, go check out my fucking photos on Facebook, but make sure you like them, because if you don't like them, then my likes aren't going to be high enough. It's like, fuck that, man. I can't. If you think like that, if you're listening to this, fucking get it there. Just go try something, for the love of God. Fucking weed the narcissism out of this society real quick.
Swig.
Yeah. While we're at it, swig, my brand endorsement. No.
Yeah.
Oh man, please don't get me endorsed by Swig. I would have diabetes for sure. I would literally drink way too much.
I think one of the other things, and I kind of wanted to touch on this because obviously you live there, and I want to see if it's more of if you feel this, or if it's something I noticed just from being an outsider. But I mean, one of the things that I thought was really intriguing about being in Salt Lake is how literally the church is in the middle of the city, in Salt Lake anyway. You got like that giant temple that's right in the epicenter of the town.
We have a lot of those. They're pretty much in every town. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're beautiful. You can only go in if you're not practicing. You can only go in before the commencement ceremony, but they're very gorgeous. I personal opinion, I think a lot of the Catholic church's architecture is kind of superior. I've seen some mosques that are really fucking cool. But for like a modern day church, it definitely beats a mini mall church for sure.
Yeah, it's something that I kind of really paid attention to, that it seemed like, and Grand Rapids is one of those where I think at one point they had more, and this is the stat. So when I say this, a lot of people are probably going to fixate on one part of the stat, but I believe the stat was we had more bars and churches per square capita than anywhere else in the country.
Wow.
Because it's one of those things where like literally for
Bars
like
and churches.
yeah, so that's the thing is like there's a bar I go to all the time where I used to work at, and I can think of I think there's 3 or 4 churches around it, but I can also think from the bar I'm thinking of, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, like 5 or 6 bars within like you could walk to them all in a matter of like a minute or two. So kind of showcases that like my point of like there's a like handful of bars and then a handful of churches right around those.
Yeah.
And so it became this thing where like kind of looking at the city, it's interesting to kind of see how it feels like the church has always kind of got its hand or its grip in everything. And I was talking to a gentleman, and he came into my job, and it was funny. Like we didn't look like we couldn't be more opposite of people. And then through a couple of quick conversations and storytelling, like we were like, found out he's from Utah, like lives in the area, but it also has a house in Savannah, like a beach house. And he was like, here's my phone number. If you and your wife ever want to come out this way, we got a guest room. Like you guys are welcome to stay, hang out at our beach house and, have a good time. And it's funny because like, as I was talking about Utah, he had told me this thing and he's like, oh, I grew up out there. It's interesting because all the religious sects of people who don't want there to be drinking, don't want there to be these things, are also the people who buy these things and sell it to everybody else. So they're profiting off of the thing that they don't want you to do, which seems like it'd be a conflict of interest kind of a thing. And I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting to think about. And then just a lot of things like that where you're just like, huh, that's I think it speaks to a way bigger thing, but it sort of reminded me of growing up back in the East Coast, especially in Delaware, where it's like it's so rooted in the foundations of like what I think our country was built upon. And I feel like when you go to something like that, it's like, yeah, it has all the modern amenities, a nice mall and chain restaurants and all those kind of things, but there's still pockets of it if you kind of are paying attention. We're like, oh, this is like where it came from. This is what the city is like built upon. And I still kind of got that vibe, like I was saying out in Zion, where it's like, I feel like this is like shit happened because nothing was around it. So it just became its own insulated thing. And it just has always been that thing, but like we've expanded and now there's more like, oh, Salt Lake's only like 10, 15 minutes away from this thing or whatever. But some of the ideology that started in those areas still exists very heavily in those areas. And I feel like, like I said, I don't know if it's because I grew up in a place where that's where our society started from. So I kind of notice these things about places like, oh, I think this is where like this started, like something else I felt in my travels. And it's weird to say it, but I think the people that have lived there understand this. When I went to Charlotte, North Carolina, not Charlotte, I'm sorry. God damn it. South Carolina. I'll think of it in a minute. But regardless, like we were there, and like one of the places we went to was it was like where like moms and grandmothers are making like doilies and selling their wares, like on a farmer market type thing. But like as I read the plaque on the building, it's like that's where slaves were sold. And I'm like, that's fucked up. Like it's I understand why you would keep the building, but I think it's fucked up that you have people selling, like white people selling shit in this place where people were literally sold and like taken away from their families and shit. Like show it a little bit more respect than what you are. And I feel like when I go to other places, I can kind of feel those kind of things too. I don't know if you feel that when you've traveled even out of the country where you can kind of feel a place's history like that.
Definitely. I make it a point when I travel to engage in that in some capacity. I'll usually almost always, I mean, in America, less so for sure. But if I'm outside of America, always will try to attend a mass somewhere or, a prayer service at a different type of denomination, a mosque or a synagogue. Like I'll try to engage with whatever cultural aspects that I can to greater understand the history or the theology behind what built that environment. I'm fascinated by those things. I think those things are amazing to research and to learn and to engage with. I love those types of communities. You know, even going to museums, I think, is a component of that, right? Going to local theater shows or anything that you can do when you have if you have an opening in your schedule, if you're on tour, you know, obviously you're there to do a job, so it's difficult to find the time sometimes. But yeah, you have some pretty profound realizations when you explore some of that. I mean, I was in a place called Mediora, Greece, which is like 4 hours north of Athens.
Okay.
And absolutely stunning landscape. I mean, it was incredible, man. It was absolutely incredible. Huge mountains. I mean, the only place that rivaled it, in my opinion, in terms of scale is Utah, in terms of like this grandiose mountain structure. And they have all these monasteries, these old Greek Orthodox monasteries, and they're way up on the top of the hill. It's got these crazy stairs. It's a trek. Like there's like 4 or 5 of them surrounding this tiny little village. And that's how the village is sustained, is through tourism. Tourists come in, they go to the main town square, they buy various foods and things, and they go up to these monasteries and they travel and take pictures and all that. And so it's a very industrious economy for this type of tourism. And you see, it's crazy because you can see the flip side of like how this place was built originally, which was like for these monasteries. It was built around these places of worship. And now you go, like I walked up and it's just this grumpy old, Orthodox man, and he's selling trinkets for way overpriced. And, he's like, well, you can't go to the top unless you pay $5. It's like Jesus would have fucking hated you. Like, what? Like you're a state, and the religion sponsored by Greece. So Greece actually has like federal funding for these monasteries, and they still nickel and dime everybody. It's like, you're not the type of dude I respect in this theological environment. I follow particular motto here, and that guy would not agree with this. So little things like that, really, those definitely will irritate me on occasion. But just the act of like engaging in that type of learning process of going and being part of it from like a inherent existential standpoint is always beneficial for me. I love looking at how the cultures are built, and it also taking an analysis, taking stock of it lets you know what work you have left to do in some of those communities, right? If you've got if you've got certain communities that are causing issues like that at a higher scale, regardless of how they were built, you've got to work within the framework of what's going to be beneficial for the most people, I think. So yeah, it's crazy. When you travel, the more you meet people of all walks of life, you really get a greater appreciation for the human condition abroad, I think.
No, it's something I'm very much looking forward to experiencing more beyond our country, because I feel like it's going to give me more of a perspective on things like that. Just unfortunately, that's not been my lot in life at this point to be able to do that currently. Also, I think I've said to you plenty of times when you have done some of these treks and a lot of touring people where I'm like, I don't know if I could sit on a plane that long for some of these. Like, I'd be like, no way.
That's rough.
And I'm not even tall.
Rough,
not even tall. So I don't have to deal with like the lack of legroom or height.
Dude, when you're I mean, I'm 6'5" on a good day. If I'm standing up real straight, I'm like, I say I'm 6'4", but I'm really like 6'5" if I'm really on a good day. But like 6'4", 6'5", 240 pounds. Good Lord, dude. Planes is rough. I'm like a bear though. So I'll like hibernate in the window seat. I'll claim my little window seat up there and just get my little scrunch on. And I'm like a camel too. I don't really have to use the bathroom on flights. So it's like, if it's a 12-hour flight, I'm all right, dude. I'll sit down, I'll take my nap. I'll watch a couple movies. I've grown to not hate it. So, yeah, it's been a crazy time, man. I do got to start wrapping up. I hate to cut it short tonight.
Same. No, you're good.
I know it's like midnight your time too. So
yeah, no, I gotta go back to go hang out with my wife and some friends. Plotting to maybe go see Matchbox 20.
So, hell, you got to go for it.
Yeah, it's I love Matchbox 20. They're such a great band.
I
Um,
love Matchbox.
kind of like one of the last things I kind of wanted to ask you, because I think it's an interesting thing to kind of for a checking in purpose. So like people who maybe will watch these in a chronological order or go back if they're whatever the next one is. What because we're kind of at the halfway point of the calendar year currently. What have you been excited about so far this year? Like, when you look back at this year, what are you happy about? Like, what are you, excited to have happen moving into the next half of the year that it's kind of keeping you going forward?
I mean, it's been such a creative period for me. I'm really excited for all of the material that's been made between both bands. I'm ecstatic for my contribution to that. I'm really looking forward to recording the Dance Gavin Dance album. I think, and the tour. I worked really hard on Jackpot Juicer. I mean, I worked really hard on that record, vocally and instrumentally, and I think that it's a really great piece of music that I can't wait to do an actual tour off of. I think that tour will be awesome. I'm really looking forward to being my element on that. And then same thing with the recording. I'm really proud of the material. I think it's going to be very unexpected for Dance Gavin Dance fans. It's the DGD fan base. You already know my thoughts on that. The people that I meet in person are absolutely spectacular. I've met some people at DGD meet and greets that are the nicest, kindest, most genuine people I've ever met. I'm so grateful for their support of our music and are allowing us the opportunity to share with them. I cannot stress that enough. But there's aspects of the community that are really toxic and really divisive and really hateful and really shitty. And that's just with any community. You're going to get that anywhere, man. You're going to get that anywhere. Shit talkers, people that cause problems, that want drama and all this other shit. We don't care about that. We just want to make music, bro. Like, we really just are out here to make the best music that we can. And with DGD, very interesting. I mean, almost all of DGD's discography has been made by Will, like written by Will. Like, Will sit at his computer, he'll demo things out, he'll demo the drums, and then he'll send stuff off. And then sometimes it's me writing second guitar, sometimes it's Sergio, Zach Guerin, Martin, like whoever he can get. It's collaborative. And then the vocals are collaborative, right? This is the first record, I think, since probably Death Star or Happiness, like early era DGD, where the four of us like sat in a room and wrote an entire record. It has not been that writing process for Dance for a long, long time. The last time we did that was Headhunter. We had a single come out that was called Headhunter. That was it was with Tim. It was me, Tim, Will, and Matt. We sat in a room and we wrote that song. And I know before Tim passed, he told me, he was like, I really want to get back to a place with DGD where we get in the room as a band and we write together. And I know he would have been really proud of what we came up with and what we brought to the table. It's definitely, I know that every band in the world says this is our heaviest material. For DGD, I got Will to do a couple songs on the 7-string, brought the 7-string out. I got him to go out of his comfort zone a little bit, and I'm really stoked on it. Sergio definitely brought a whole new element to some of the bass lines too, and it's a really exciting era for DGD. We've got a lot of the artwork mapped out. Will and I came up with a really cool concept for the artwork. No album title yet, but we'll see.
It's actually right behind you. That's the artwork.
Yeah, this is the artwork here. No, it's actually really cool. I'm stoked. Will and I were up late one night and just kind of came to us. It was really cool. But we ended up writing a lot. Like, we wrote 10 songs in 10 days, but each of us had some other songs on the back burner beforehand. So we actually had about almost 20 songs to pick from that we are still sifting through. I mean, we haven't even like really gotten to the nitty gritty of exactly what songs. We're right on the cusp of that, but we are recording it throughout the rest of the year. We're going to be doing instruments and then vocals, and then it will be done recording. And I would imagine pretty much mixed and mastered by the end of the year. So it'll for sure be coming out next year. I'm excited for that. I'm excited to get back in the studio for the second half of the Eidola stuff. I'm doing a lot of studio work this year. Just putting everything down that's been written. And that material is really cool. I think it's going to surprise a lot of people. It's a very interesting and unique take on some of our other explorations of the genre, so to speak. There's a lot of upbeat stuff. There's some electronic stuff in there for the second half of the Eidola double album. So getting in there and recording that, I'm really looking forward to. And that just the musical endeavors are going to be really awesome. I'm really excited for what we've got brewing, and I think that'll manifest in the tours that we have this year and the tours that we get next year, in how we can share that with people. And I'm really, really excited that my idea got approved for this whole Eidola rollout. I think fans are going to be very happy with what we come to the table with. It'll be the most like interactive space that we have ever been in as a group, where if you are a diehard fan of Eidola and you like what we do and you like what our message is, like, you can interact with us regularly in a non-toxic, non-social media environment. You can actually just come and be a part of it with us and engage in the content and talk about music, and just have it be a healthy, positive space. That's what I'm most excited about, is trying to bring that level of like positivity and health and mental wellness to other people, and trying to build a community, because I can't do that alone. It's a collective experience. We have to be fluid with that. It's a two-way street. So I think that whoever wants to engage in that with us, we're really excited to bring that to the table and do something new.
Well, kind of wrap it up. I want to say thank you as always for doing this, because it's funny, like you say, you don't do much press. This is pretty much it. And Lord knows, like I've told you several times, the amount of people who find these and share them everywhere. Like, I think I had sent you the text where like a friend of mine hopped on Reddit, and his Reddit like main page of stories that were like the big thing was someone in the DGD community had shared our last chat, and it was on his main page. And I was like, holy shit. Like, it just is baffling to me to know that that's a thing. And that that many people care to comment and do all those kind of things, which, I get a little bit of it, and it's crazy to see, but it's a thing where, we reiterate this every time, but this is almost just like one of those things where like it's an extension of the conversations we just have when we're together, or even in text or whatever, or voice notes, because I love doing those, because I can actually articulate something like in real time. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. You look like an asshole when you're doing them, but like, I don't care.
Of course, yeah.
But it's a thing where like I always look forward to these, and I think like it was crazy because like the last two, and especially this one, like you have really been the one that's like itching to do it and wanting to come on and just like talk. And I told you, I was like, I think we're gonna kind of get right into it and get right into something that I think is gonna be the thing that I'm probably gonna get a lot of comments from, that when this drops, where people are like, oh, I needed this because of X, Y, or Z. And I feel like that's the thing that like, if this podcast, like I just dropped episode 400 this week, and like I'm approaching the 7th year of doing this. So it becomes this thing where, I think I'm just kind of at the level of where this show will always be, and it's fine. But I think like these are the kind of conversations, these are the episodes that when I actually get the feedback, I'm like, this is why maybe like I'm here to do this. This is why maybe I didn't give up doing this, because like I'll get the messages that people are like, I finally went to therapy because of you, and mainly you, Andrew, talking about this thing or doing this thing, or like, I'm hoping this one, instead of the therapy and all these kind of things, I hope maybe this will give the people, someone, permission to be like, I need to reach out to my friend if I'm a bit concerned. I need to be a better friend maybe. And then please inversely,
you don't know when your friends are gonna die. That's straight up. Man. And I think I let out a chuckle because it's how I deal with a lot of that pain, is just trying to laugh through it. But like, it's legitimate, man. You should check on your people.
Like we talked about that on the last time we were talking about like how we've lost people very randomly like that. So it's like, we understand it. So that's why like me texting you and kind of being a little concerned, like it comes from a place of that happening before. And I wish I would have sent a text. I wish I would have made the phone call. I wish I would have done something, because instead of doing nothing, that's all I can think of, is that I didn't try enough. And so like, I don't feel weird about putting myself out there that I did that. The adverse too is I hope that someone, when they do this, maybe it begins their journey to better themselves, maybe not just mentally, but from a physical perspective. And it is a thing for me where I am appreciative of your support in everything that I've done, and in the conversations we have, where we can have honest, kind of deep conversations, and that we don't make each other feel weird for some of the things or the questions or ideas that we come up with. So I really appreciate our friendship as it has come to be over these, I want to say almost 10 years now, collectively, from meeting digitally and to now, like, in person and so forth. And I'm excited, for as much as I can say this, I'm excited to see you in a couple of, I think, 2 months when you're on tour in Detroit.
It's gonna be great, man. Yeah.
So we'll grab some food, and
feelings mutual, man. 100%. I'm grateful for you, for sure. Yeah, let's get some grub, dude. Let's go out. We'll do it up big, man. I'm excited.
I'll make sure to I'll be in my fasting window.
Excellent. All right, you be in your fasting window, because we're gonna gorge out a little bit. We don't.
Absolutely. Enjoy the rest of your night. Looks like it's time for you to take your dog out. Probably because he just got up.
I know. Yeah, he's fiending. Yeah. So thanks again, John. I appreciate you, man. It's good to hear from you. And yeah, anytime, dude. Yeah, even if I'm in Europe, man, just reach out. I'll get back to you as soon as I get. So
absolutely. Have a good one.
Yeah, you too, bro.
So that was my conversation with Andrew. Want to thank him again, as always, for taking so much time to chat with me, to get so raw, real, vulnerable. It's not something I take lightly. I know that a ton of people listen to these, watch these episodes. Coincidentally, they're always my most viewed, most commented on, most discussed episodes, probably outside of Patrick from Ice 9. But these are episodes, and these are times that I cherish getting to talk to my friend. And it's something with this one, like I said, with it being a little bit more of a personal thing, where, like I said in the intro and in the beginning of the episode, talking about, my fear of something happening to him, to then kind of discussing, not being happy with myself when I looked in the mirror, and not being happy with the excuses I was making for myself as to why I couldn't better myself as from a health perspective. And the journey is still going. Obviously, when I had done the chat with Andrew about a week and a half ago, I think, as of right now when I'm recording, I had tipped the scale down to 197. That's the lowest I've weighed in probably a good 6-7 years. And it's a thing where, I just weighed myself before doing this, weirdly. And I'm down to, or I'm up, I should say, from where I was, but I'm at, 198. So not really, I haven't really lost any more weight. I've kind of been stressed the last couple of weeks since recording this, of kind of trying to find a different job that allows me more time with my wife. More of a work-life balance. It's bittersweet, though, because I challenged myself when taking this job as a general manager of a store to, be that person, and could I take those responsibilities on? And in some capacities, 100%. I mean, you don't fall into, being the store manager of the week or general manager of the week out of our district 2 weeks in a row if you're not doing the right things. I have a great staff. I have great people. I've taken the time to turn the store around visually. Everything that I've done, like when I leave, because the leaving is fast approaching in a couple of weeks, basically. And it's one of those things where, as I'm kind of looking around and thinking about, the short journey of the last 4 or 5 months of being there, I remember what the store was, and to see where it is now, it's night and day. And you can see every hour and everything I put into that place. And as I was looking around today, as I'm kind of dialing the last little things to get the store where it honestly should be, to be pretty much at 100% of where it should be based on, planograms and all that kind of stuff. And knowing that my district manager is going to come see it, Friday. So in 2 days, as I'm when I'm recording this, I'm trying to dial in those last little things. And I keep telling myself, and I really thought about it today as I was looking at the store and just kind of taking it all in, and, kind of gathering those last memories of sorts, that it's a thing where I go, if I just focus like the same effort and energy as I would, and I did the store, I'll see the same results probably actually in the same amount of time, 3 or 4 months. And I think that's kind of where I'm at right now, is I just want a better life. So it's a thing with the weight loss journey. I'm doing things. I haven't really added much in the way of working out just because of the weird hours I'm keeping, and the hours when I'm not working, I kind of want to spend with my wife. But something in the new job that's going to give me more consistency in a schedule, something I definitely want to do and will do, is to start going to the gym and kind of adding that on to eating better and so forth. So I think once I start doing that, that's going to kind of be the final piece of the puzzle, to kind of start hitting more of the weight loss goals I wanted to, which the first one was to get under 200. So I've hit that. The next one is to get to 175 is the ultimate goal. So the real minimal goal, in between that, the intermediate goal is going to be to get to like 185. So got about another 12 pounds to go. But obviously I think I can do it, and looking forward to actually hitting up Andrew and maybe getting some advice on what to do to help me get there, and then kind of shape what I have. Kind of tapping into a different part of our relationship that we've never really delved into, because in my head, as a person who, with Andrew, his other job basically being a personal trainer, the last thing I really probably want to do is be like, hey man, so trying to drop some lbs, what would you recommend? Because I feel like half the time when you have a friend that has a career or a job in something and they're very good at it, the last thing you really want to do is to kind of take advantage of that and be like, hey, so yeah, for free, what do you want to tell me how to do? Or can you come over and do this for me? So I try very hard not to do those things, and to, pay the people that I know accordingly for the things that they do. Shout out Porter for the graphic that I had him make me a while back for the podcast, but that was something that, I paid for. So he earned his money and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't like mixing business and friendships and all that kind of stuff. I think it gets kind of murky. So all of that said, I would normally tell you this is where you get to keep up with Andrew on the various socials, but he doesn't have any. And Eidola, obviously, the second episode now that we've done, where we've talked about the upcoming records, and what to expect. And obviously DGD, as you heard, a lot of stuff coming from them. Honestly, it was really great to hear that Andrew is just in such a creative space, where he's just the ideas and the things are propelling him forward, and he's inspired to just keep going. It's crazy. You kind of get a glimpse at times of some of the relationships and the conversations I have with my friends. But, I knew that Andrew wasn't really stoked with Eidola and wanted to quit the music industry a mere few years ago. And now here we are, getting 2 more records from Eidola after already getting To Speak to Listen to, and then The Architect. So now we're going to get 2 records. And then DGD just put out Jackpot Juicer maybe a year ago. And now we're already working quickly toward the next record that they're going to be putting out. So, and then possibly, I guess, maybe some solo Andrew music, whatever that looks like, or I guess whatever Eidola morphs into once the concept and the overarching story that he's been wanting to tell is done. So a lot to look forward to if you're a fan of Andrew's in any capacity. That said, though, if you'd like to keep up with Eidola, you can find them on Facebook at Eidola UT, Instagram at Eidola, and Twitter at Eidola. And Dance Gavin Dance can be found on Facebook and Instagram at Dance Gavin Dance and Twitter at DGD Band. Just look at the socials. You'll find everything you need to know. And everything you need to know about our sponsors was talked about in the intro, but just in case you skipped over that, if you'd like to keep up with our sponsors, Rockabilia, go to rockabilia.com, pick you up some awesome merch. They have pretty much anything you could want. If you're a fan of band merch in any capacity, use our code BREW10 at checkout and take 10% off your total purchase order. And Starving Artist Brewery, thanks to them for sponsoring the episodes as well. Go support them, throw them a like on any of the socials where they are. And if you happen to be in the Michigan area and near them, go check them out. They have a really awesome little brewery. I want to just support our sponsors for always continuing to support me over here, and all of you for supporting the show as well, by listening, by sharing it, by commenting, whatever it is that you do. I'm much appreciated. If you have any suggestions or anything or want to reach out, you can email me at brutallyspeaking@gmail.com. And for the Brutally Speaking podcast, I am John, and I will talk to you all next time.